Let's start.
He's right there. Oh, great. I'm still getting over it next year. I'd like to call the Tuesday, January 7th, 2025 Duval City Council meeting to order. Would you all please rise and join me in the flag salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, would you please take the roll? Yes.
Mayor Oberlander,
Here.
Mayor Victoria Henry, here, Mr. Isaacson,
Here.
Mr. Schaefer,
Here.
Mr. Mercer,
Here.
Mr. Supple,
Here.
Ms. Naplin, Ms. Kufelt.
Here. Right, we have a quorum. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the agenda this evening? Oh, sorry.
I just wanted to add an excused absence for Councilmember Naplin. She's out tonight due to illness.
Thank you. All right, do we have a motion to approve this evening's council agenda?
So moved.
That's it.
All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. With that, we'll move on to proclamations. The first one we have this evening is for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day, and I'll go ahead and read that into the record. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. dedicated his life to pursuing justice, equality, and peace, challenging us to envision a world free of prejudice, poverty, and hate. Dr. King's unwavering leadership during the civil rights movement not only inspired a nation, but also ignited a global movement to confront the moral crisis of racial segregation and inequality. His influence led to landmark legislation that continues to shape the fabric of our democracy, a testament to the power of one individual's commitment to justice. Whereas Dr. King's message of nonviolence, compassion, and unyielding hope is not a relic of the past, but a guiding light of our present and future. It remains as vital today as it was during his lifetime, reminding us that the arc of the moral universe bends towards justice only through our collective action and courage. Whereas Dr. King's legacy is not just a memory, but a call to action. It calls on each of us to reflect not only on the progress made, but also on the work that remains. We must address systemic inequities in education, housing, healthcare, and criminal justice, ensuring everyone can thrive. This is our responsibility, our duty, and our privilege. Whereas Dr. King's dream of a beloved community challenges us to dismantle barriers, celebrate diversity, and build bridges of understanding, empowering everyone to contribute their voice and talents to a more inclusive and equitable society. Now therefore, I, Amy Oberlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, do hereby proclaim January 20th, 2025 as Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day in the City of Duval. Let us celebrate the strength found in unity and the power of love over hate. In doing so, we affirm our shared humanity and renew our promise to uphold the ideals of liberty and justice for all. And the next proclamation we have is for National Mentoring Month. Whereas January 2025 will mark the 23rd anniversary of National Mentoring Month, an annual campaign to focus attention on the need for mentors, as well as how each of us can work together to increase the number of mentors to help ensure positive outcomes for our young people. And whereas the City of Duval honors volunteer mentors who support young people by showing up for them every day and demonstrating their commitment to helping them thrive. And whereas mentoring programs like Youth Success Mentoring, a program of Empower Youth Network, makes our communities and our state stronger by driving impactful relationships that increase social capital for young people and provide invaluable support networks. And whereas after the COVID-19 pandemic, mentoring programs have stepped up to fill gaps for young people and families, connecting them with resources and ensuring that mentoring relationships continue. And whereas mentoring plays a pivotal role in career exploration and supports workplace skills by helping young people set career goals, equipping mentors with the skills needed to support the professional growth of young people, driving positive outcomes for young people and businesses. And whereas quality mentoring promotes healthy relationships and communication, positive self-esteem, emotional well-being, and growth of a young person and their relationships with other adults. And whereas students who meet regularly with their mentors are more than 52% less likely than their peers to skip a day of school, And youth who face an opportunity gap but have a mentor are 55% more likely to be enrolled in college than those who did not have a mentor. And whereas youth who meet regularly with their mentors are 46% less likely than their peers to start using drugs, 27% less likely to start drinking. And whereas National Mentoring Month is a time of year to celebrate, elevate, and encourage mentoring across our state and recruit caring adult mentors in the city of Duval. Now therefore, I, Amy Overlander, Mayor of the City of Duval, do hereby proclaim January 2025 as National Mentoring Month in Duval. Do we have someone here, clerk?
No one has signed up yet from Empower.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we'll move on to comments for the audience, and I will read the rules into the record and for those present. During the designated public commentary period within city council meetings, individuals are allotted a 3-minute speaking duration, while representatives of organizations may address the council for up to 5 minutes. Before presenting, kindly disclose your full name and city of residence. It is strongly advised by the city to submit verbal comments in written form to expedite subsequent correspondence. Written comments must be received by the city clerk's office by noon on the meeting day, addressed to P.O. Box 1300, Duval, Washington 98019, or deposited at the City Hall drop box located at 15535 Main Street Northeast, or by email. Please be aware that the City Council, its boards, and its commissions solely entertain public comments from attendees present at the meeting in person. The council does not accept handouts or printed materials during public commentary sessions. Information intended for the mayor or the city council shall be directed to the city clerk, who will disseminate it following the submitter's instructions. Upon receipt, the city clerk will receive, upon receipt, the city clerk will receive written public comments and subsequently furnish them to the city council or the relevant board or commission. However, it's important to note that written comments will not be orally presented during the council or applicable board or commission meetings. Any written comments received after the new deadline for written comments will be shared with the council at the next council meeting as part of the city clerk's report. Do we have anyone here for public comment this evening? And if so, if you could approach the podium and provide your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Not seeing any. So we'll move on to adoption of the consent agenda. Do you have a motion to approve this evening's consent agenda?
Sorry.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. We'll move on to scheduled items. First up, the mayor's report. Just want to remind folks, as we've got our lobbyists here tonight, legislative session starts next week. The Association of Washington Cities is ready to advocate for cities and towns' priorities in Washington State, and I'll be doing so in my capacity as the AWC president. Wanted to remind folks that the legislative city action days are coming up in February. It does fill up pretty quickly. I know there's over 100 spots now, but as the weeks go by, it is not uncommon for it to be sold out. So if you'd like to attend, please notify the clerk so that we can get you registered right away. The city does cover hotel down there as well. So there's a reception with our legislators, often a dinner with the 45th and 48th legislative districts, sometimes other districts and their councils as well. So excellent opportunities for networking and learning what's going on during the session. On a somber note, I would like to ask the city council and staff and members present to share a moment of silence in honor of the victims of the New Orleans terrorist attack, and also a moment of silence for those military veterans that have found it too hard to go on, and as we've seen in the tragic incidents in our country this last week. Thank you. Thank you. And now we'll move on to the city administrator's report.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the community. Cynthia is out for a bit, so I am going to do the report for actually my department, city administration, and for Steve.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they're just bringing it up really quick. It is a little bit longer for this one because we added on to the one from the last meeting that was, I'll say postponed. Let's go to tonight.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So the first one is for the Public Works Department. So you can see this is really good news. We have the majority of the properties now within ownership. And we have the one to the south, which is on the right-hand side of the slide that is under contract. We're gonna go from 10 acres to 40 acres. And so we're super excited, like we're super close to getting this. You can see that they're already doing some preliminary design and planning. So we're definitely really excited as staff to continue to see this move forward. Today, when I was talking to Steve before this meeting, our Public Works Director, Steve Laniszewski, I said, this is a legacy project in your career and for our community. And there aren't a lot of those in our careers. And so this is definitely one that he'll get to live and breathe for a lifetime and then carry on to the next generation. Next slide. So a little bit more, the city of Duval purchased its first electric vehicle. It's kind of been a long time coming, but as we remodeled the Public Works building, you can see that we installed 2 charging stations, which is really 2 apiece, so it provides for 4 chargers. We had a pretty good sized budget. We didn't honestly know that we were gonna buy this. Steve went through the state bid. They were more expensive, about $37,000. And then we decided, let's check out what else is going on in the region. And sure enough, Kirkland had a vehicle for us for $21,000. I kid you not. So that was a great deal, saved us money and allows us to potentially buy more vehicles in the future or buy other vehicles earlier. This is the first time that something's come in substantially under, and it's about time. It's been about 5 years.
Yeah.
Almost everything's been over budget. So anyway, we're super excited if you want to come down and take a look at it. Obviously, we buy bare bones models, so it does have, you can drive it. And it does get only about 100 and a quarter for a full charge, but this is just going to be zooming around the city. So it's a great investment. And it does save gas. Okay, next slide. So community development, this is really just an update for kind of the month of January within our community development department. So we have the transportation plan open house. I did send out an invite a couple weeks ago before the holidays, and surprise, council's hosting it. So hopefully you can come. If you can't, it's okay. I just wanted, planning commission hosted the last one, so council's hosting this one. We have our capital facilities public hearings slated. The first one is tomorrow, and then the 21st, city council will host the hearing. We are working through our sign code update. Kind of a long story, I'll talk about it later, but we have to do a pretty quick update for parks and public facility signage. We also worked on and actually completed the community development policy work. And so you're going to be seeing in your next council packet a written report that is our work plan and our strategic plan to get the work done over the next biennium. January 21st, we are going to have a land use map and a zoning map and how they're alike and how they're different. Because what I found is with new planning commissioners and even new council members and members of the community, not everybody understands the difference between a land use map and a zoning map, and they're actually very different. So we'll be talking about that at a future meeting. And then we're also going to talk a little bit more about vesting for land use as we bring forward our update on permit processing. Next slide. King County Housing Review. I'm so excited. We had a great kickoff meeting with the county. We presented our housing plan to them. So now it's in internal staffing review. We have a meeting this week to go over preliminary comments, and then they'll get essentially a final draft letter to us, and we have like 2 days to review it and provide any comments. And then it will go to the King County Committee, which is our elected officials, and they will issue basically the final letters. And then we'll be moving on within our comp plan. Next slide. You probably saw this in your last packet. These are just FAQs that have come out, a snapshot of FAQs that Commerce provided, and also did a webinar for us planning folks in the state of Washington. So these are just 3 of many code changes that we have to make this year that were either in the last legislative session or the year prior to that. And there's a couple of new ones that we've not ever talked about, like lot subdivision, but that's for another day. Next slide. Community development dashboard. Holy smokes, it was a busy year. It was a very busy year. And I'll actually be providing a written wrap-up report for 2024 in early February. So you can see that in general, our inspections have doubled over the last 5 years. And our permit numbers kind of go up and down. That's, it just depends on who's got lots that they can build on. But it was a pretty big year. So imagine, 1.5 people doing 3,400 inspections. Because that inspection is only the building department. That does not including public works or planning. But we do obviously less. They do the majority of them. And so I just wanted you guys to kind of see that, because we're going to play around with a little bit of information. Obviously, the averages are easy to look at, but just as we're watching staffing levels, we also have to produce, right, for the community and for our clients, which is the community and the development community. Next slide. So I don't know if I've shared with you before, but the city of Duval is part of a coalition of other cities and Snohomish County that looks at all things building. And so we put out FAQs as a group, because if you do it as a group, there's consistency and predictability. And so Duval is actually championing doing some of these FAQs, and then they go before the internal working committee. So this is the first one we've done for this year, and not to bore you, it's on like pouring concrete in cold weather. There actually are some parameters to do that, because if you pour it when it's too cold, it will actually crack, peel, and slough off. So you can see Monroe, Duval, Lake Stevens, Snohomish County, Stanwood, Sultan, and Woodinville, and I cannot tell who one of the cities is, so I apologize for that. But yeah, we're partners. Next slide. And then super exciting, planning has its comp plan page updated, and you will be getting an email to the link. So we started doing podcasts. So we've got the first one done, 3 more are on tap. And then the page is just fully implemented now. So it's really exciting. We're finishing up transportation now as well. And we've got the first podcast for transportation. We haven't made that one live. And then talking with the city clerk and administration, we're going to push them out through our YouTube station as well. So, I mean, really, super exciting time. It's a good lift for us. I feel really confident in the information that we're getting out there. I know other cities doing this. And it does take time, and it is valuable. Next slide. City Hall update, Sport Culture Grant update. The city received a 3-year sustained support grant of $38,000 for 25 through 27. In addition, the City Historical Society received $64,000 in for cultural doors open facilities grant. So that's really exciting news. City event planning is underway for 2025. Public Works is going to feature a Touch a Truck event, which is super exciting, and tours of the wastewater treatment plant. We have National Night Out in August. And this year we're going to be beginning with an event at Depot Park for those that don't have neighborhood activities. So a little bit of everything, a hybrid. So we're excited about that. Yay, council retreat, tentatively scheduled for March. I'll leave that up to you guys. I'll move on. Reminder, council chats are publicized on social media. You would have received an invite through your Outlook. So hopefully we'll see you there. If we think there's going to be a quorum, make sure and communicate with John so that he can do his work on his end. 2025 Human Services Grants will be launched January 15th. So thank you, John. I know that that's a ton of work. think that's, oh, council chat, there you go, there's one more slide. And
There's a
so,
few more.
there's a few more, okay, keep going. Oh, these are the pictures, oh my gosh, it was truly amazing, so thank you for everybody that was there, and the mayor, there's some great photos of you that were taken in the community, hopefully you've got some of them.
Travis is pretty amazing,
Because
those are some memorable.
This is your
photos for sure.
legacy as well. Okay, next slide. And this was our first time event, and I could not believe how popular it was. Like, I'm almost tearing up. It was so amazing. We had a ton from the community and actually outside the community. And the activities, we got really good feedback, and we got feedback from our vendors too, which is really good. So if we get to do this again. There's a couple more slides. Oh, look at that staff holiday get together. So this was the first year where it was really hard to fit everybody, and I think that's a really good thing, because that shows that people are coming and excited about coming to like our luncheon. Plus, we have a couple more, employees as well, and so it was super nice.
Right, anybody have any questions for Director Thomas? All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to council reports. Does anybody from council have anything they'd like to share this evening?
Oh, sure. I have something. A little prompting there. I did send an email to council about all the upcoming conferences, and there's a lot. So the first one the mayor already mentioned is AWC next month is the City Action Days. I am planning on going. So I will be sending our clerk an email probably tomorrow to ask to be registered. So it's over, I think it's the 19th and the 20th. And then the next one is in March, and that is NLC's Congressional Conference in Washington, DC. When I went to the City Summit Conference, I won 3 registrations and hotel stays. So that is a huge lift for us. Like, it's a huge weight off of our budget. It was just like a digital dash contest they had, and I won. So we'll have budget to do that. It'd be helpful for planning though, because if you've never been to that conference, you get a first time attendee rate, which is lower. So depending on who all is going, we can leverage that to use the registration award thing for different people. And then there's some other stuff later this year, but I think the main thing would be that, and then the AWC conference in June. So the sooner we know who wants to go to what, it can help us figure out budget and also to get registered with early bird specials. So I think that was all I have. Also about, I guess really quick, I sent an email about some of the committees I'll be serving on. I'm on 2 growth related regional committees, just as an alternate, but it's a good foot in the door and to bring the Snoqualmie Valley areas to some of the growth issues we're having. I think that's it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Anyone else? All right, well, we have written reports included in the packet, and then we have 2 presentations this evening. The first off is swearing in of our newest police officer. Please forgive me if I pronounce it incorrectly, and please do correct me. Natali Hernandez Ponciano.
Yeah.
I got it right?
Yes.
And then we have a legislative presentations.
Good evening, welcome Mayor, Council, members of the community, those in attendance, and also fellow employees from the city as well. This is a very important step in every police officer's life, whenever they get sworn in and they raise their hand to sign an oath and agree to an oath of service. It is also an important moment where we talk about pinning of a badge, and the badge is highly important for a police officer. It symbolizes the oath that we've taken. It also talks about our ability to, it says that we want to uphold service to the city and what we do. And so the pinning of a badge relates back to medieval times, but it also relates to the fact that it is something that the public sees first. It's something that is very important for us to honor that badge as we go forward. So it's been a very interesting year this last year. As I spoke to you when I first came with the city at the end of December of 2023. One of our issues we had was staffing and employment. Retention was at an all-time low, and we presently at that point had about 40% undeployable resources as well as absences in our agency, and that's very significant for an agency to grow. Due to a lot of hard work from individuals that we have working in our agency, as well as those that presently work for us, recruiting other individuals out here. This is a culmination of us making sure that we go through the right channels and hire the right people. I was always told that the hiring of a police officer is very important for the makeup of the agency. We hire for character, we don't hire for their abilities. We know we can train them to be police officers, but character at most has the highest role that a police officer has. And so when we make these decisions to hire individuals, they have to pass my character test. They have to make sure that they're a good fit for our agency, as well as that they have a strong desire for service. So I'd like to introduce Officer Neftali Hernandez Ponciano. Tell you a little bit about him. Neftali came from Morelos, Mexico. He was raised in Mexico and moved to Texas in 1999, where he went to work for his uncle hanging drywall. Hard work, very hard work, right? And Neftali moved to California in 2004 and eventually started his own mobile detailing service. He moved back to Texas in 2013 and eventually moved to Santa Ana, California in 2014. Neftali was eventually promoted at work as a warehouse manager, and he moved with his family to Mercer Island in 2019. In 2022, Neftali began work as a seasonal worker for the city of Mercer Island, and in August of 2022, Neftali began working as a skilled worker for the city of Bellevue, before recently getting hired as a police officer for the city of Duval. Neftali has a 14-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, and enjoys playing soccer and spending time with his family, visiting parks, biking, and taking weekend getaways. I'm so proud to be able to introduce Neftali to you, and I know that he will do great work for us. His desire for service is top-notch, and I know that this is a very important stop when we talk about legacy. And the individuals that I hire as police officers for agency are those that I believe will be the legacy long after I'm gone. So it's increasingly, I'm very proud of you, Neftali. You graduated from the academy. Now the hard work begins, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now it's the oath of office.
Would you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, Neftali Hernandez Ponciano,
I, Neftali Hernandez Ponciano,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I faithfully and impartially
perform the duties of police officer
perform the duties of police officer
for the city of Duval
for the city of Duval
as prescribed by law
as prescribed by law
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
that I will support and maintain
that I support and maintain
the Duval Police Department's vision,
the Duval Police Department mission,
core values,
core values,
and the police officer's code of ethics.
the police.
Police officer's code of ethics, this is not easy,
Yeah.
trust me. Uphold the Constitution
Uphold the Constitution
and laws of the United States of America. And laws of the United States of America, the state of Washington,
the state of Washington,
and the ordinances of the city of Duval,
and the ordinances of the city of Duval,
so help me God.
so help me God.
We're so excited to have you. Unless you're reading it, even then it's difficult.
I got it.
Everyone knows. I got the right date.
Excellent, very good. Good, you need to see. So next goes the swearing of the pinning of the badge. Who's gonna pin your badge for
My wife,
you? Anything you'd like to say before they come up here?
and my wife, Patty Hernandez. Oh,
Not your children. Not your children. Yes.
Everybody, come up. Yeah.
Oh, Ethan.
Come on. Let's move away from the recording a little bit. There
We
we
can
go.
get a good picture.
Perfect.
Okay, the oath is not easy when you don't have it ready in front of you. Before I- to your choice.
Congratulations. Want to get a picture?
Who's taking this?
Everybody. Ready, 1, 2, 3.
We're gonna.
Oh.
No, you shoot, chief. You shoot. And Mayor?
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Now, it's not uncommon for a police officer that'll go in a dark alley, look for a bad guy. Go into positions unknown to become a little nervous when they're in front of people. I'm extremely proud of the people that are here to watch in attendance, especially from our agency. They have put a lot of effort in making us better. And every day we get stronger, every day we do a better job, and every day people are learning. So I'm extremely proud of the people I have here. And I'm extremely proud of you, Mr. Hernandez.
thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Well.
Thank you, thank you.
All right, and now we'll move into our second presentation, presentation on the upcoming legislative session. And this evening, I'm pleased to share that we have Katie Whittier, who's the VP for Washington Affairs for CFM Advocates, and Brian Enslow, who's the principal Arbitus Consulting, to provide an update and preview of the legislative session that starts this coming Monday. So Brian and Katie, you're welcome to approach the podium. Thank you, Matt. Good evening, everyone. We're going to talk about the most exciting thing ever. You've already heard a bunch of it on the news, I'm sure, but we have a legislative session starting on Monday. It's going to be a wild one. It's a long year. We'll talk a little bit about what we expect to happen, how we're going to help you, and how we hope we are able to help you. Talk a little bit about who we are. This is our first year serving you. We're very excited about this new partnership. Do a little bit of crystal ball looking into the future. Take it with a grain of salt, as the future is sure to change, and then answer any questions you may have. We'll get started. Starting off, I'll introduce myself. Brian will moment to introduce himself here in a minute. Katie Whittier, I am with CFM Advocates. We represent you both on the federal level and the state level, and we are state level lead. My background, I've been working in and around politics for the vast majority of my career. My first job was actually, while I was still in college, I was a lobbyist for the University of Idaho student body. And I worked in Boise, so I cut my teeth as a lobbyist in Boise. Moved out to Washington during the 2010 campaign cycle, ended up working on the official side for US Senator Patty Murray, which is how I met the mayor several years ago. And took a little bit of time away from politics to cut my chops in PR, public relations, communications, and really learn the messaging side of the house. Now I'm returning to politics. This is my first time lobbying in Olympia, which is why it's really important that I have a partner who knows his way around Olympia really well, and that is what Brian Enslow is bringing to the team.
I'll let you talk a little bit about yourself.
Great, thank you. Brian Enslow, principal of Arbutus Consulting. Yeah, my first job after college was answering phones at the governor's office, and that was in April of '99. I've been around for a while. And I've loved working in government and being either in public service directly or connected to public service ever since. I had the opportunity to serve two different governors as a budget writer. I also worked for the House Appropriations Committee for then Budget Chair Glenn Summers, which was definitely very instructive and instrumental part of my career. I worked for the Counties Association in public safety and criminal justice for 7 years, and then in 2016 I went out on my own. Being able to represent a community such as Newell is what makes kind of that connection to public service. When sometimes when you're just running your small business, you're like, what am I doing? And being able to have the opportunity and privilege to represent such dedicated, hardworking individuals as yourself is what really continues to make my life meaningful. As a big part of my portfolio. Thank you, and I'm happy to be here. And look forward to getting into the details and hopefully helping get some good results for your community.
And this is why CFM and Arbutus work really well together. We've had this partnership well before I was brought on board because we have such an established relationship working at the state and federal level together. CFM is very committed to public service. I'm glad you brought that up. And it's one of the reasons why when I came back to politics, this is where I ended up. The CFM mission is very much about how do we help local governments have a voice, get money at the various levels where this is available, because local governments is where the rubber meets the road. You're the closest to the people. You're doing the work that really matters, that can influence single lives and community lives in a real way. And we believe that having the visibility in the governmental process for your priorities is the highest calling that we can serve. So the vast majority of our clients at CFM are local governments, wastewater districts, and sometimes nonprofits. We also believe in serving at that level as well. So we work really well together, and we'll continue doing that. Next slide. A little bit about what to expect for the 2025 legislative session. It is a long session, that's 105 days. It means it'll end or sine die around April 27th. Now, it'll be a complicated year. There's a chance of special sessions, but generally Washington, unlike other states I've worked in, Idaho, is pretty good about ending on time. So expect a lot to happen in 105 days. We have a new governor. We have new agency staff. You've probably heard a lot of new announcements. Who's going to head different agencies under the new governor's administration. So there's going to be just a lot of change at every level. We have new executives. DNR has a new head. Insurance commissioners turned over, as you know, for the first time in many years. And the legislature, since 2020, has seen a 40% turnover. And that's actually a low number. I think it's probably close to about 43-44% at this point, because a couple of legislators have been tapped by Governor Ferguson to come onto agency level positions. So we have to fill even more positions. So lots of new people. This translates into new leadership, new committee chairs, even in some cases changes in committees themselves. So there's just a lot to learn in the next few weeks about how this legislature is going to come together and work together. It's just new territory with a lot of big ideas and a lot of new faces, learning the ropes all together. Then on top of that, we have a budget gap. And you're going to hear anywhere from a budget gap of 10 billion up to 16 billion. What the actual number looks like, we will find out, because he's still shaking out. You'll hear a lot about 12 billion, and I think realistically that is the number that a lot of legislators are looking at. The Governor Inslee, when he released his budget late last month, said his budget projection was that we were about 16 billion below, and that was because he expects some cost of living increases for state employees over the next two biennium. And that's where the 16 billion comes from. So we're talking a lot of money, in fact, a bigger deficit than we have seen even during the recession. These are real dollars.
And that is on a 4-year base. So when it says about 20%, so Washington State has a biennial budget, you probably all know that. It's around 70, 80 billion by the time this 4-year period is out. There is a statutory requirement that the legislature have a budget, and when they leave town, that pencils out over 4 years. So that's why you'll hear us talking about a 4-year. It is a statutory requirement, not a constitutional requirement.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Next slide, please. Budget. So you're going to hear this as the headline for the next 4 months, I guarantee you. It usually is the very last thing to get settled, it's the last thing to get settled in a legislative session, and it's gonna be really difficult this year. You are going to hear conversations about new taxes, you already are hearing this all of the time. New revenue, some new solutions are gonna have to be found, in addition to a lot of serious conversation around cuts to services, around temporary easing on certain programs to see if we can save money. He and Brian will talk more about this later, is that we're not in a recession. So this is different than past massive budget deficits. We're not facing economic dire straits at this point in time. We hope it doesn't get to that point. But that does allow for a certain environment to come about, and that is why from both sides of the aisle, you're hearing a lot of discussion on overspending versus raising revenue. And that's going to be the push and pull that gets a lot of attention this session. Governor Inslee's proposal, 17th of December, he announced this. He talked about freezes to some programs, cuts to programs, delayed implementation to save a little bit of money here and there. Getting the most attention in the news was the 1% wealth tax on global holdings over $100 million. That affects about 3,400 Washingtonians. It is different from a previous legislative proposal on wealth tax, which had that cap at 250 million instead of 100 million. Whether it's feasible or not, we're going to find out in the next several months. You know, tax increases were also part of his recommendation. Those are going to have more impacts to your local businesses, and it didn't get as much media attention. But in the first year, it would impact a certain number of your small businesses. In the second, quite a few. So that's probably going to get a lot more attention on the legislative level. See if it ends up materializing. Important to you, the Public Works Assistance Account, PWAA. In Governor Inslee's proposed budget, he takes 100 million per biennia out of that account. That's about a quarter of the money, and then puts it in to fill in some budget gaps. This is important from an EWC agenda perspective, but also the PWAA funds a lot of local government infrastructure projects. Keeping that intact is paramount to finishing your Third Avenue project, you know, any other sort of infrastructure projects that you have coming up. So we're going to be paying a lot of attention to, can the legislature leave that alone, leave it intact, even in fact grow that pot of funds? Not likely, but possibly that would be a really big help to local communities in Lafayette. The legislature takes over from here. As you know, Governor Inslee's done next week, and then Governor Ferguson steps in. He's the person who will ultimately sign that budget. He'll have a lot to say about it, but he's not putting out a budget of his own. So the legislature takes it from here and really sets what actually goes into the budget. You're going to hear things about property tax lid lift. This will be important to you, so I'll talk about it more in just a minute. Potential payroll tax is already being discussed, as you've heard of. CL electronic cigars, it's similar to that payroll tax. Excise taxes on guns and ammunitions. This is already part of the conversation. And then a different threshold on wealth tax is also a proposal on the table. You, I think, Brian, wanted to take in there.
Yeah, and I'm, sometimes I don't project, so I apologize. But I do love the fact that I can just walk around. I don't try to scare you, but I'm gonna walk around a little bit, because I think it helps me talk a little better. But one of the things, one of the things, the other thing you're gonna learn about me is like, one, I love my job, and hopefully that comes through, and two, I'm like get into the weeds sometimes and I'm bored. So hopefully that connects with you, but one of the things that I find.
Don't worry, Brian, I've got the hook.
One of the things that I find is really fascinating is we've seen a pivot from maybe like traditional revenue sources like a property tax. And so, for instance, you've probably heard a lot of conversation about whether it's school districts or other local governments, when they've been looking at other resources to start helping their budget tension. Talking about replacing the existing property tax cap with a new cap that's somehow tied to inflation, whether it's a 3% total or whatnot. This doesn't have that. And so it kind of begs the question, like, as the state starts thinking about how they're going to deal with their operating budget tension, does their solution have space for local government or not? So that's a big part of our conversation, and to see Governor Inslee even translate away from, say, looking at property tax or looking at some sort of sales tax mechanism and looking at these what I will call, and what many people identify as progressive tax solutions. The thing I just want to highlight is like, how does local government and school districts and other things like that get into that conversation, especially given how unequal wealth is distributed in any given state, but in Washington state as well. So that, I wanted to flag that for you because that's something we're definitely tracking. I would expect that similar conversation, that similar tension to happen in the legislative arena, given the current makeups of the respective chambers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I like the weeds. Sometimes we go into this. Next slide, please. So you know your legislative agenda, you said it. I watched the video of your council meeting where you did that. But to review, AWC priorities are top of the list. We are working up a capital budget request for your civic campus, which we know is a huge priority. There would be a game changer in terms of opportunities for city, resources to come together. Just talking to the chief beforehand about how important it could be to upgrade to code so that we're meeting the threshold of the law, and the civic campus is a way to do that. So top of our list is seeing if we can get some funding, even in this tight budget year, that could help you make steps towards that. Funding for Third Avenue and funding for Big Rock Ball Fields Park to really be able to make the most of the parcels and the vision that's coming to life there. Next slide, please. Talking more in depth about the AWC agenda, and you probably know an awful lot about that, just given the nature of the mayor's involvement there. But here's where we'll talk a little bit more about that property tax cap. So currently, you're capped 1%, and that is not enough to keep pace with the reality of how expenses are escalating. So a key agenda item AWC is pursuing is to revise that cap up to 3% and to tie it to both inflation and population growth. Currently, the 1% isn't tied to anything. It's just kind of an arbitrary cap that you have. Doing that doesn't mean you're automatically going out and asking, your voters to carry more of the burden, but it does give you that option. And so you can stop the bleeding, right? And you can catch up. That requires the state legislature to approve it, and that's what we are hoping to do. AWC wants to go beyond just planning and get into the building part when it comes to affordable housing. The housing debate is going to be loud. Not as low as budget, but really, really, really close. So AWC really wants to see us get out of the big ideas box and start seeing, brick and mortar, start seeing some real solutions come together. Important to you is to make sure that this is a diversity of housing options. There's not a one size fits all approach that is going to work, not in King County, not anywhere. And so allowing flexibility and diversity in the solutions that come together are going to be huge. And then predictability and consistency when it comes to growth management and planning requirements. Laura, she was giving us a little bit of an overview of what we can expect when it comes to the planning side of what the legislature likes to dabble in. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that as well. Also, AWC wants to expand state funding to help maintain and operate city infrastructure, increase funding for the Public Works Assistance Account, which is already at risk. So you can see how this is rapidly becoming a top priority, even before legislature has convened. Also, increasing fiscal tools and resources to address public safety and criminal justice challenges. This is a high priority we know for the incoming governor. We think there's opportunities to see some movement there. Next slide, please. Our key approaches to your agenda are, as I mentioned before, seeking a capital budget request to the tune of $2 million to fund the design phase for your civic campus. This is super high priority. Even in a budget year like this, we believe that this is something that we can pursue and have a good shot of selling the case here for this. So we're speaking tomorrow with one of the representatives, hoping to secure some sponsorship and start building support in that direction. When it comes to funding for Third Avenue improvements, maybe transportation package, I don't know, that's a lot to hope for in the midst of this budget year, but we would look for that if the opportunity comes together. There's road use charge, that concept RUC being thrown around quite a bit. We don't know that necessarily that would be ready to fund anything in this biennium, but certainly laying the groundwork for that, potentially, and Brian will talk more about this shortly. More likely, we're looking at grant potential. So there's a couple of grant programs that we will be looking at, hoping to preserve through this budget cycle, and then go into grant applications when they open later this year or next, depending on when they open. Same when it comes to ball fields, Big Rock ball fields. Most likely grant funding is going to be the solution to get that funded, and protecting that funding through this biennium is going to be really, really important so that the funding is there when we're ready to go out to grant. So that's how we're approaching your agenda at this point. Next slide, please. And Brian is gonna talk a little bit about the broader context and what we're up against.
Sure, happy to. So we got a bunch of things on this slide. What are some of the key messages that we've already kind of mentioned? Well, we've talked about this operating tension. It's really a function of inflation at this point and the cost of government services, whether it's cost of bids or, cost of objects, like salaries and benefits and things like that. As alluded to earlier, I was somewhat involved in state government in the tech bubble, and then was working for Governor Gregoire in 2011 when we had the housing recession, and so I've been through state recessions. And what's interesting, right, is what we're looking at now is not necessarily a dropping off of the revenue curve, we're just seeing this pressure from the increase. And the reason why that's, I think, uniquely interesting, and it ties back to why we believe there's opportunities in capital budget is the capital budget in the state is essentially a function of how much you spend. So at the state, there is a constitutional debt limit of 8.25%. And there's a statutory debt limit that's always just a little bit under that to make sure they don't go over. But so what happened in the early 2000s, when your revenue projection went down, your bond model got compressed, right? And what happened when the housing market crashed and your revenue projection went down, your bond market compressed, because honestly, it's a function, your bond model is a function of how much you spend and what your interest rates are, right? Interest rates are high, but they're looking fairly consistent for the next, forecasted period. And our revenue is holding like this. Okay, so bond model is still good. You add in any conversation about revenue, whether it be meaningful or just $100 million here or there. Well, every dollar you spend in the operating budget is likely going to become 8 cents in the capital budget, but then it's bonded against, but then it's multiplied, right? So we think there are some opportunities in capital budget. There's also in a somewhat rare form of prudence, the legislature didn't spend all the Climate Commitment Act dollars last year because it was on the ballot. And they're like, well, let's not spend all this, let's just be. So there was $2 billion over the next 4 years in Climate Commitment Act dollars. That's very fungible in the operating budget, in the transportation budget, in the capital budget, but it is creating some capacity. So we're looking at some tight times. There's going to be big fights between the operating budget. I want a revenue package, transportation budget. I want a revenue package, but we both can't have a revenue package. So there's going to be fights between those chairs. There's going to be some just conflict about whether it makes sense and whether you can muddle through the next 2 years. But that's why we think there's some real opportunity. Okay, we've got new leadership and all those new members, right? Many of those new members started when we had $15 billion in extra federal money. Like, there's a lot of legislators that have never had to make a truly hard decision. And I don't mean that to be critical. That's just the facts. They just haven't done what you all have had to do at a city level, what we all have to do at a family level, is like manage within 3% or 2% or something. They have not. So this will be a new challenge. And the House is an organism, the Senate is an organism, and it takes a while to kind of like get itself sorted out. So that's going to be interesting to watch. Those numbers, the 30 to 19 number in the Senate is obvious to me because I can be like, oh, that's 60%. That's a supermajority. It took me, because I'm not the smartest person, I assure you, it took me a little while to realize that 59 and 39 is also 60%. So what does that mean? That means at the 60% threshold, you can pass a capital budget and a transportation budget with only Democratic votes. I honestly think that's the great thing, but I'm just saying that's something that can happen because you need 60% to pass a bond. So that's why it's germane in the capital budget and the transportation budget. On the operating side, operating is on all just simple majority for the most part. But that gives you a lot of votes to play. So it's just something to think about. And the reason why we're gonna worry about that is like, things can become very, very urban or Puget Sound specific. And I just think when it comes to like statewide capital plans and statewide transportation plan, when you have a bipartisan effort, kind of pull it apart, and just deep Puget Sound. So those are some things to think about. When I look at my crystal ball and I think what's gonna happen, I think what satisfies the base, but doesn't cost money. And some of those things have a very close nexus to the work you do, whether it's increase in liability, increase in labor costs, things like that. So we'll be monitoring those. Next slide, please. Oh, I don't know, who knows, right? Like, I think I might be on the way up, I saw that, we do have like a continuing resolution for the next little while, and the government isn't gonna shut down, but. There is, a lot of signs that indicate that at least for the next 2 years, that our state is not going to do particularly well with the new administration. What I would say to temper that is that, right, you do, unlike Washington State, where I said everything on the operating side is, simple majority, at the federal level, particularly in the Senate, you do need 60 votes. So I still think there's gonna be a lot of bipartisan stuff when it comes to congressional direct spending and things like that. But as far as whether it's Washington State has delved deeply into like Medicaid waivers and things like that, and whether those are gonna continue to renew. Not, and whether state leases sources are then expected to backfill some of those programs, I got a lot more questions than I got answers, quite frankly, but those are the things that we're getting. Okay. Next slide. I think I've hit that capital budget opportunity pretty hard. I think I hit it on that other slide, so I probably won't mention that again. I think as those conversations around whether it's Welltex, which I'm trying to think of the source. I like to quote sources so you don't think I'm just being partisan or saying something, but I saw in December, some of the caucuses had released polling on like wealth tax, capital gains tax, things like that. It appears to poll pretty well, so I think that's why those conversations, but then again, tying it back to like other state revenue sources, whether it's counting, like city criminal justice assistance, things like that. If the state is going to do something to fix their revenue in their operational challenges, how do we include local government? Same with road usage charge. I was actually on the phone with Senator Elias today and kind of having a conversation. He's trying to generate interest in a transportation package. Representative 5, who's the chair of the House, is deeply invested in working on getting the policy in place for road usage charge, because it takes a while to get that from the moment that policy is approved. Then it takes a while to get to an implementation step, and then it takes even further after that till you're actually generating revenue from it. I think conceptually, whether you agree with this or not, the way I've heard it conceptually is right. Gas tax is charged on the impact that you have on the environment. The road usage charge is the impact that you have on the roads.
Brian, I just want to flag too, just for yours and Katie's awareness, historically, I've also talked to both Senator Elias and Representative Bai about if a road usage charge moves forward, to work really hard to have a local government option for
Yes.
our funding, because, for example, from discussions with our staff on the Third Avenue project, we're not eligible for a lot of the funds that we need to take that forward, and the sales tax, TBD sales tax doesn't cover it.
100%, and that goes right to where I was saying is, I think we've had a more responsive conversation with Representative 5 and Elias, and I've heard some conversations around like a destination charge, like a charge and package charge, and if the people who work for Amazon ever hear me call it an Amazon tax, they but I think conceptually thinking about the packages that are delivered, would there be a charge on that? I've heard some movement and conversation around that. Again, I worry about, that's just not enough for the needs when it comes to like, how do we maintain like local maintenance and preservation, and to the extent that there is a statewide conversation, there needs to be a local component and there needs to be a local option. Agreed, 100%. We've already talked about action days. It sounds like your staff's on it, and it does fill up. I know that I myself have sometimes not gotten everything I needed to do on time administratively, but they usually let me sneak in. So And then you want to grab the last bullet?
I do, yeah.
Great.
The great thing about having CFM at both the state and federal level representing your interests is we find ways to work together. And the next 100 days, 105 for me, and Trump has a very, very ambitious 100-day agenda that he plans to start on January 20th, is there are going to be opportunities to leverage a win here with a win here, right? Nothing, legislators like nothing less than being second to the party sometimes. If you're like, hey, Adam Smith just got us this, can you get us X, right? Like, we can work with that. And our federal team is really plugged in on a lot of the changes that are coming, that we anticipate, and that are already in the works. If you hear rumors that maybe earmarks are going away, we do not believe that is going to happen. So rest assured, we believe that they are going to be the tool that really can get Congress to move forward. And so if there are opportunities to find earmarks that would spur any of your projects along and help at the legislative level too, those are the opportunities that we are looking for. Our representatives at federal level are David Hodges, and he's based in Vancouver, Washington, and commutes to DC. So he, I think is commuting this week. I'm not exactly sure. There's a lot going on. And then in DC is Cameron. And I forgot his last name, but he is there full time, and those are your federal team. So we are working really hard on your behalf. And with that, thank you for having us tonight. We are very glad that we didn't drive through that storm to get here last month, so we do appreciate the good weather today. It's much simpler. Any questions we can answer?
Councilmember Mercer.
Just one quick one. I mean, your slides were great in terms of outlining specific agenda items. I know one of the things when we looked at the AWC agenda, in addition to sort of driving policy changes, there was certain callouts around, and I think you touched on this, Mayor, around local control. And in terms of, and so some of that's around policy, some of it's around new tools and mechanisms that can be applied locally. There wasn't a specific call out, but I assume that's woven all through this, that you're also looking at driving those conversations with the legislature as well.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my clients is a local government or special purpose district. I would say with you, my one that isn't is a nonprofit. So it's kind of woven into the fabric of how I think. So yeah, local control and how, in my mind, how close can we keep resources to the people themselves, and local is where that happens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Can you give an example of how you guys actually work with legislators, state and federal, to actually influence them, help them know what our needs are?
There's a lot.
Sure, I mean, do you want, I'll start?
Go for
Or
it.
jump in? Is that okay? I always tell people I'm in relationships with problem solving. And again, as I mentioned in my background, I've had a long-standing relationship with members of the legislature, with staff, with agency folks, the people that I've grown up with working at OPEB are now like deputy directors of the state. And so I take it, right, so I have that network of individuals in which access to communicate. What I find, I was sharing this anecdote earlier. When I was like 30 something, I was in this room, the governor had corrections, and the governor had every job in the state, the entire state. And the head of corrections started working at like Mesa Youth Camp when he was 17. And I thought to myself, I said, what the heck do I know compared to these Indians? And the answer was like, I didn't know anything, but I knew where their values aligned. I knew the way she thought and what she wanted, and I knew what he needed. And I could help them kind of work together and find that place. And that's the same way I approach my job in the legislature. I know that the tension and the things that they're working on and the context that they're working on, and because of you, right, you know the city, you know the values, you know what the citizens need, you communicate that to me. And I help move your delegation and move legislature, get that alignment and get back to that fundamental value. Like Representative Larry Springer wants to do what's best for the citizens of Duval as well. He's elected by the same people, right? And that's that base, and I utilize that base and we get to there. And those are how those conversations are. And that's the approach that I take. And like Kate said, we're meeting with Representative Springer tomorrow at 11. We're gonna have a conversation about civic campus specifically and how what's happening here now isn't really helping, like in terms of having a place where your staff can work together in the most effective way, a way where the citizens can have access to the government in a way that they deserve and have co-location of services and really have the benefits that you want to see. So that's, I mean, hopefully, I could take way more time, but hopefully I've got some, yeah, hopefully I've given you kind of like a little bit of insight and kind of the value that we hope to provide and the kind of the place in which the work comes from.
Thanks.
And so
Councilmember Isaacson?
No, sorry, no, you.
just to back it out just a little bit, in some cases, I see it as three things. So the relationship piece is huge, just knowing the people and values, and that is what Brian brings, because I'm still learning a lot of that. A lot of it is about knowing the process, and I've worked at every level of government, so I know a lot about various processes and know where to insert at the right time in the process, or even how to navigate a process. So for example, a capital budget has a very specific process, and figuring out how to work through that. Part of it is relationship, part of it is knowing the process and the deadlines and getting it done. And the third piece of it, I just lost it. Of course I did. Is awareness. So keeping your priorities top of mind while there is so much noise. That is so much what we do, and we can feel like broken records, like talking about the same issue over and over. But if we're not doing that, it is not getting heard because there's just so much noise, and it doesn't mean that your priorities aren't a big deal, they're a huge deal. It's how much to cut through the noise, so that's a lot of what we're doing too.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Isaacson?
So you made a statement about the road use charge, you comparing it to fuel tax, the fuel tax is for the environment. Road use charge is for what it is.
Yeah,
but
conceptually and how.
conceptually, historically, it's not
Correct.
truth. Not, I mean, it's not accurate, it's like you said, so you get fuel tax are used to maintain our roads. And they're also now going towards environmental efforts. So now we're gonna come with a road use charge, not call it a tax. How any insight into how that's being implemented, and for choice of words is key. People see you say charge, not you, but charge instead of tax. And things like, well, it's gas taxes for the environment, this is for the road use. This is like to our citizens, to us, it just feels like you give us more and more of your money. What's the value in just coming a road use charge? And where can we get educated more on that and
Sure.
things like that?
No, it's a great observation. I appreciate the opportunity to reflect on the way I presented, so thank you. It's really helpful. I think one of the things that I didn't start from a level setting standpoint is the conversation, of course, around vehicle miles traveled or having some sort of tax associated with the number of miles that you drive is because of gas tax as a diminishing source and its viability and its projected viability long term. So I think, right, that's the conversation and I'm not sure I envision it in a world where it could be like net neutral impact. But you could establish the road usage charge that says, starting in this moment, we expected that we were gonna have this amount of revenue from the gas tax. But we're gonna start migrating in a way, and we're gonna start here. Now, obviously, the thought is that that will grow in a way that's different than what gas tax would go, but in a moment in time, you could do it in net neutral. Now, I'm not saying that's what's being talked about or what will be policy, but and I should back up, that is what certain individuals, when they think about it, how they think about it, right? Like theoretically, you could swap out property tax, sales tax with a income tax that was in one moment of time revenue neutral. So there is some of that conversation. But you make some really good points about, is this just additive? What is it gonna look like? How is it gonna fundamentally change it?
You're gonna see a lot more conversation about that, so.
Councilmember Supple?
Yeah, does the state government require, or the state constitution require a balanced budget? At the end of the session?
Yeah, so. Yes, sort of, and so, I wanna be correct on what's kind of like the distinction, the point I was making about statutory versus constitutional and constitutional, okay. So when governor provides a budget, they're required to do an initial budget proposal that is based on current law that balances. Most of them do what's called book two, which is another budget that includes new policy and new revenue, whether it's budget driven revenue or not. The legislature can't spend money that we don't have. So we can't do like a federal government like deficit spending. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, I mean, I think, aren't cities required to have a balanced budget?
Yeah.
And so I was wondering if that carried over.
Yeah, so we can't, but, I mean, I'm not trying to be, like, we can't print our own money, so we can't spend, but I just, I wanna, like. Depending on how much money is in the bank, because right now there's a fair amount of money in the rainy day fund. You can actually have a budget over 2 years that spends more than the revenue over 2 years, but we can't spend money we don't have. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
One other more question.
Sure.
That 3% property increase in the 3% property tax, does that require a change to the Constitution or is that a
Legislative simple majority change. But it hasn't happened,
Yeah,
right? It's been talked about since it was put back in place by the legislature.
It's going to be-
in 2000. I don't know, I'd have to check back on, but it's been a while.
Councilmember Kupel.
Hi, I have a question around the B and O tax. Being that Duval is a small town and our small businesses are small, I would guess, since I have one and I know most people with one, that most of our small businesses don't gross over $1 million a year. Is there gonna be any like steps in the B and O as to who pays what, or is it gonna be like flat fee?
It, I have some notes, we have to look at them. The first year, so the threshold is set at $1 million, which to me feels really low.
It's
Like $1 million in gross receipts, and not even profit. So we are talking businesses that are here in town. And that is why I'm a little bit surprised it isn't getting as much press as it is. But I can tell you, the business community is already involved, AWB is already involved in this, so it's going to change. But let me look at my notes and see if I can find the exact threshold here. Because it was a little bit complicated, of course. So, B&O tax increases at 20% over the current tax rate in year 1 and 10% thereafter. So that's not really graduated. It will change. I think that, what Governor Inslee did in just mentioning it all was put the flag in the sand, that that's where we're going. So, expect AWB to have a lot to say on that, and I wouldn't encourage involvement in that conversation because that threshold does seem pretty low.
Any other questions?
Great questions.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Brian and Katie, for coming tonight and giving us an excellent overview of what to expect this session. Definitely looking forward to working more closely with both of you. I haven't worked closely with Brian in 17 years about, not at this level, so I'm really very much looking forward to it. And I can assure the council that these two are the consummate professionals, and this is Cynthia made the right recommendation to choose this firm in this collaboration. And I know that we're gonna reap the benefits in one way or another over the course of this session and the next session. So thank you very much. Looking forward to seeing you both in Olympia.
Yeah, January 2009.
Yeah. Right, it just is a little bit of side note, Brian and I first met when he was working at the Association of Counties and I was working at another county doing legislative work. So we go quite a ways back, almost as far back as Katie and I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and move on to new business. First item is Agenda Bill 25-02, the election appointment of the Mayor Pro Tem for discussion and decision. And so I'll turn it over to our clerk.
Good evening, Mayor Council. I haven't done this before, so it's a learning opportunity. I'm gonna screw it up, let's screw it up together. we have, as Mayor Pro Tem McHenry's term has ended, by municipal code, we have to select a new Mayor Pro Tem. So we will begin with if anybody wants to nominate themselves for the role. Please speak up and we'll take the name, then we'll take a vote and we'll go with it. If I'm making a mistake, please let me know.
Mayor Pro Tem McHenry.
I'm not nominating myself, but I'm nominating somebody else. Is that?
Okay, please,
I wanted to nominate Councilmember Ron Mercer to be our next Mayor Pro Tem.
Any other nominations? Councilmember Schaefer?
There's nothing to prevent us from renominating Amy McKenna.
That is,
It's correct, but I think she's nominating Ron for.
No, that's okay.
for your reason. Well, you're welcome to.
I do nominate Amy McHenry and I have nothing against Ron.
All right,
I was just a little surprised. I thought it was a given that Amy was going to continue.
you can, but first I'm gonna wait to see if there's any other nominations. All right, seeing none, I'll start with current Mayor Pro Tem McHenry, and then I'll go to Councilmember Mercer, and then we'll get a vote.
So I just wanted to say thank you, that means a lot. And I had said I would be willing to do one more year, but it is a 2-year term. I love doing it, that's the only sad thing for me is I really love it, but Ron's gonna be awesome. And as it being a 2-year term, in my mind, it helps with continuity, since my term ends at the end of this year, his does not, that he can continue through those 2 years, so. That was my main reason, and it's good to, you know, pass the torch around and let everyone know it's turn.
We'll let Councilmember Mercer speak, and then I'll hear you.
Yeah, and I just wanted to sort of share a little background. Amy and I sort of discussed this, and I think to your point, Rick, you know, I also was looking, you know, for what Amy wanted to do. I know, you know, she's also, I think it sounds like a really interesting role. It's also sort of at times been a stressful role. I think there's a lot of other things going on with your boys and just, you know, life in general. This creates a little more time. I think Amy also mentioned she was on quite a few more committees than she expected, so her time commitment is divided. So, you know, again, I'm was willing to defer to her as well, but I think she was also looking for a break, and this creates an opportunity for me. And as she said, it also addresses that 2-year overlap, since the terms of the council members and the terms of the Mayor Pro Tem don't necessarily align, rather than having someone start over again.
Oh,
Go ahead, Councilmember.
so, when does this take effect?
Tonight.
Oh, tonight, so next meeting round. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't realize that, you know, Not exactly, but it's, we talking about like the retreat, you know, so that kind of gets thrown right in there, so there's some planning work that also is.
Don't worry, Councilmember Mercer, you don't have to take an oath without having words with you.
You need a reserve.
All right, is there any further discussion on this? Oh, go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
That, you know, when you take on the role, I'm still here though, so it's not like, don't talk to me, I'm not sharing any of your questions, like I'm here, so it's, you know.
But we still have 2 nominated candidates, so we'll go ahead and do a roll call vote, and this will be pretty obvious. Yeah, let's set then.
Can I say something?
Go ahead, Councilmember.
And I do believe Ron would be or will be an excellent Mayor Pro Tem. I think we're all familiar with Ron's steady demeanor. That's very important for a Mayor Pro Tem, because there are tough times to go through. Amy McKenna can certainly speak to that. And secondly, Ron has a very logical thought process, which again is important as we consider and weigh, you know, many different factors that go on and the pros and cons. And there's seldom a black and white answer to what we do. So I believe Ron is a very good candidate for that.
Thank you, Councilmember. All right, we'll do roll call for council member. We'll start with the first one nominated for council member Mercer.
On the motion of appointing Councilmember Mercer as Mayor Pro Tem, Mr. Isaacson.
Yes.
Mr. Schaefer,
Yeah.
Ms. McHenry, that's gonna be weird saying. it. Mr. Mercer,
Aye.
Yes,
It feels great that you have to.
Mr. Tuttle.
Aye.
Ms. Naplin is not here. And Ms. Cofield.
Aye.
Excellent. Congratulations, Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
I know what I'm getting into.
I would just like to say that I'm excited that you're taking on this new role. When you joined council, I was hoping that at some point you would be ready and have the timing right in your life to be able to take on a leadership role, no matter who is in my seat today. So I'm very excited about your next 2 years in this role, and I know that you're gonna do a fantastic job. We can be fun, even though council meetings can be difficult. Administration is actually pretty fun to work with. So we have a great team that will, especially Cynthia, our city administrator, will make sure you're up to speed on all of the things that Mayor Pro Tems get to be a part of. And we'll work with you to help make sure council's priorities are implemented, and definitely looking forward to it.
Thank you, and I want to, thank Mayor Pro Tem Meredith, I guess now. For sort of her counsel as well, as I was thinking about this in terms of, helping me with the pros and cons and making sure that, it was kind of going into a wide open and accepting a nomination. So I want to thank you for your time, that, service to date, but also your counsel. So thank you.
And I would also like to give a personal thank you to Councilmember McHenry for this last few years. She's been an incredible Mayor Pro Tem. I will say that she has done an extraordinary job of learning how the city operates, building fantastic relationships with staff, and being incredibly supportive of our staff at the city in a way that just makes me feel really good about her work and about our work. And we've been able to talk through and work through challenges, sometimes some really big ones, sometimes there's plenty of them that we sit and laugh about on the phone today. And, she's, this opportunity for her getting appointed to so many regional committees, it's taken almost 2 terms to get to that level of that relationship building in the regional level to get these appointments. That also speaks volumes to not just the work that she's done within the city of Duval, but the work that she's done regionally and externally outside of the city to build relationships and bring the city of Duval's issues forward in a way that I haven't seen from many other council members in my time here at Duval. So this provides a great opportunity for her to kind of share the wealth and also encourage, as always, everyone to think about serving on other committees, and we have one coming up here on the agenda tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
If anybody else would like to say anything to the Mayor Pro Tem, you're more than welcome. Including staff. Oh, but you want me to.
Well,
Go ahead.
since I was invited, it has been true delight to work with Mayor Pro Tem McHenry. And just thank you for all of your assistance and all of your help. And I'm extremely excited to work with Mayor Pro Tem Mercer and offered our assistance, and anything we can do to help, we're here.
I think it'll be a learning opportunity on sort of both sides as well. So.
It'll be great. Thank you. All right, now let's dive into the serious business. Let's go to our next item of new business, funding considerations for school resource officer. And I'd like to welcome Dr. Susan Leach, our superintendent of the Riverview School District, and Mr. Robertson, the assistant superintendent of business and operations in the Riverview School District.
Good evening. It's actually my first time here. I'm in my 3rd year of my superintendency, so thank you. I appreciate your time today. I know Misha will get into a little bit more detail about the SRO position, but I just wanted to take a minute to express my thanks for the wonderful service that we've received from the Duval Police Department. I cannot begin to express the level of security that we feel as a school district and me as a leader responsible for our school district with the service that we receive from Chief Keller and his staff. It honestly, when anything happens, and you can attest to this, the first thing I always say was a Duval incarnation, because I know if it's Duval, we have reliable, dependable, consummately professional staff that are responding. We just feel so supported by them. When fortunately, knock on wood, we are not a district that has major incidents on a daily basis, but when we do have them, we have incredible support from your police force, and I just want you to know how much we appreciate that. And thank you. And I know you want to talk a little bit about the SRO's position in particular.
Yeah, so earlier this year, we had a meeting with Chief Keller and Cynthia, and I had requested that when it come time to start considering running another levy measure or whatever method that the city would use to continue to fund the SRO for our high school position, that we would maybe have an opportunity to come and just advocate for the importance of that position for the school district. The partnership between the district and the city has been, and the police department has been like nothing I've experienced on the other end of our campus. And it is so important for us to have a local police department that we can build these relationships with our students. Outside of even just a dedicated SRO, we often will have night shift police stop up and just come in and pick our brains on where kids are at in our community and what else they can do to help support the kids in our community. The SROs that have been dedicated to the high school have built relationships that are much different than what our own safety and security staff can do. The district has really prioritized making sure that we have increased our safety and security staff, but the staff that we employ play a much different role. Same with our administrators than the SROs do in our buildings. And we've had several different SROs. I see Clem's back there now, and we're so grateful that we're gonna have him as our SRO now. But the relationships that we've built with all the other SROs have been just so valuable to all of our students. And it gives all of us in the community, our parents, our staff, just the peace of mind that we have that support from those officers, whether we haven't had someone in that role because of staffing shortages. We've always been able to work with the police department through how are we gonna provide coverage, what does that look like to work with the police staff. And even in times of shortages, we've always worked out coverage for the high school. And then just being able to build those relationships even in our elementary schools where police presence doesn't seem abnormal. And it's just a part of our daily routine and it's a positive thing. And that's so different than when I first started at the school district where the police officer was at the high school, building must have been burning down or something. And now it is just a normal routine for police officers to be at our buildings. Our kids are comfortable with them. And a lot of that is due to the support that the council had in getting us that position before. So as you're looking forward to future plans for that position, we would really like to continue to have conversations. If you guys have questions or want to talk to us more about that. And we just hope that that's something that will be continued to be supported in the future.
Questions? All right, does council have any questions? We'll go to council first and then we'll come back to Chief Keller. Councilmember
Chief, you wanna go first?
Right.
Okay, now, my question is about the budget. We did include SRO in our annual budget, did we not?
It is only included through the end of 2025 because that is when the levy expires for funding of the school resource
Okay,
officer.
thank you for reminding me of that, okay. Yeah, no, thanks, Chief, go ahead.
Thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate it. My feeling has always been that a school resource officer is integral part of us having contact with the community, and developing those relationships is often very difficult for somebody who has no expectations of law enforcement, only hears what they see on the news or what their friends tell them, to have a different perspective. And Officer Maeda is at the high school. He does a really great job with building those connections. I know he's in the process of doing that, but our officers also put a very strong effort in trying to make it to the other campus in town. It's not just the high school. We try to make sure that everybody has a good relationship with law enforcement, because how do you build a better relationship than having those contacts and having those discussions and making sure you deal with that on a daily basis. The approach we take here is very similar to what we use from where I came from, and it is a very successful program in Bothell. It sounds like it's been a very successful program here, and I intend that as long as it's funded, that we continue to do that as well as we can. So thank you.
Yeah.
Councilmember Isaacson?
You had mentioned other resources, security sources that come from the school district, things like that. Maybe I'd recommend would be the one that can answer this question, but we know we're coming up on a funding challenge all across the board, and therefore positions like this are gonna be of discussion. But funding, other sources of funding that you're using for other levels of security that are different, can that be used at the city level to help us fund the RSO position? Obviously, if the super, at your position, agreed to put that money there instead of using those other security, you know, you said the SRO is very important. If it is more important than those others, we have to all make a decision on where we put the funding. Is there a way of doing that? Could you forego some of those security measures and put that funding to the city for us to be able to use to fund SRO?
I'll let Chief Keller go, and then Finance Director Whitman.
And they can explain it better than I can, but the roles are completely different. Their school safety program deals with all schools in the district, not just the Duval school, and they have a different role. They don't have law enforcement authority. They don't have that ability to do so, and they fill some of that need that we can't support right now. And so they can tell you that. I think that's always a good to have a partnership. Where I come from, we do have a partnership with the school district in North Shore, but it's a very iffy at times partnership through funding. So we do take on that role, but I'm sure that they can explain that a little bit more than I can.
Yeah, and I just want to say as well that I appreciate the funding challenges that you're experiencing. As you know, we're experiencing some of those same funding challenges, but it's not lost on us that this is going to be a tough budget season for you.
Okay, well, I did just wanna just re-emphasize that, our current SRO is funded by the voter approved levy. So at this point, it's not general fund per se, it's designated levy funds that the voters supported. So it's different than funding the court and police department. However, when that is funded, there is an extra resource, in times of emergency when we need that extra support. Councilmember Mercer.
Yeah, and this was not as much, again, I appreciate the sort of early engagement around the conversations, because the sooner we can have those. I just wanted to sort of reiterate it from my own family's experience, but also emphasize a little bit what the chief and you said is, you know, there's a role, obviously, a safety of having someone there who's responsive and close. I see the force engaging with youth out in the community. And I think that early interdiction, whether it's building relationships, be it creating trust in terms of if it's not safe to talk to someone at home or something's going on with a boyfriend, girlfriend out in the community, but also to be able to engage when you're not on the school. And then, you know, I also appreciate the comments that you're sort of spreading, even though we don't have a sort of a dedicated funded a resource officer at sort of the elementary school, that you're covering a broader range. So again, just I think it's a great program. I know we've adjusted there and other aspects of it, but just basically having that presence and the ability to build that relationship, I think it's a valuable investment and, we'll partner in terms of how to figure that out.
And I think in terms of your question, and also Isaacson, it's not impossible for a district to contract services with the police department and pay out of a district budget. But I do think that that's where it would pose some different challenges, because if we did that, we're covering 2 jurisdictions. So if we contract someone, I think it was, I don't know, Amy or Cynthia, someone said that then it would be covering the entire district. So we would be contracting a Duval resource officer. We also wouldn't be, if we were using district funding for that position, we would have to require that we had a full-time person. And so then that could potentially sometimes short the department if we were paying for the service. And a lot of times, like if those departments short now, then we don't have a full-time officer up there. We just have coverage and we know that someone's gonna be there, and we're just in great communication, and we schedule with our own staff, so we're able to kind of fill that in. So it seems like it works better for the department, and from what I've seen in the past, but I don't want to speak on the department's behalf on that. But it seems like it works better that way, and it's the same, we can run it as part of our levy. But again, it just poses different challenges with the different jurisdictions.
Yeah, Rachel. Or actually, council member now.
I'll take it a little adjustment. Yeah, specific to the SRO, I think it's such a valuable position, and we've all seen the value. I have 2 kids in the school district, one's at the high school, but just overall with our police department too. I mean, I know I've run into chief a couple times at games. My one child's in the band, so it just, it's a sense of security. It's a big gathering, these sporting events, and just having our police department there, like I said, I know that's not specific to the SRO, but just in general, that relationship that they've formed with these kids and that they engage with them. They don't avoid them, they go and seek them out. I know mine always do. So I think it's just super important to our community. Public safety is always one of the highest things that comes back in our surveys. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
And I just did want to say, from the personal privilege as a parent, who just had 2 children graduate Cherry Valley last year and are now at Tolt. They've had the Duval Police Department present since they were in kindergarten. And there's no doubt that it helped them feel safe when scary situations have happened, like when there was a lockdown last year because of the students trying to stab people, and our officers were there. And so in addition to it being the relationship building, there's also the deep familiarity with the staff and the facilities that really help provide a safer environment overall, not just for the staff and the kids, but also for our officers when they're going into the situation. Because no matter what, even if we had no resource officers, our police department would be expected to go in and take action immediately, as they do multiple times a year. It's just the way that our department interacts with our community as a whole, and especially the kids in our community, is something that is not standard across the country right now. And it really is a model for getting back to kind of that hometown, everyone's part of the community, help guide them to a better future. And also, I might give my kids a little scare tactic and let them know that everyone's watching them, and if they're out and about in town wandering around on their own, they get caught doing something, that they're gonna call me and they're gonna bring them home, and they're gonna be in a lot more trouble. That has not happened, but put that fear into them that, you're gonna get caught. And the worst thing that could ever happen is that they're gonna come home to mom. Being a little bit dramatic there, but it's been, that presence has been very welcome. And I really hope that through the levy, through a new grid levy, that we can continue to service on into the future within the city limits.
Appreciate it.
Any final comments or questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. If council would oblige, if I could take a moment of privilege, and we now have representatives from Empower Youth Network here to accept the mentoring proclamation. So I won't reread it, But I would love to have them up to the podium and provide them a moment to speak as well. Well, I think we can do a photo op, but then I would like you to speak. We did read this into the record at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay.
So I apologize, we didn't let you know that it was starting at 5:30 instead of 7. It's pretty unusual, so it's not in our normal operations, so.
I think we might too.
Thank you.
Make sure we get it. Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Great. Yeah. Perfect. You're gonna just give them a get yours. 1, 2, 3. Great. And if you'd like to say a few words.
Yeah, I'm Heather Downing and I'm the program manager for our Youth Success Mentoring Program. And we partner with both school districts and we're in 17 schools in the Valley. And I have today Denver and Michelle are mentors. And so they just kind of want to speak to that and the impact that they're seeing as mentors.
First picture I've taken before I presented today, so this is unusual. Heather did prepare a speech, so I'll try to get through this to capture all of the items that she wanted. So again, Denver Mackler, I've lived in the community for about 19 years. I'm a mentor at Cedar Crest High School, started at in Carnation, Drew Tolt, now at Cedar Crest. So with Empower Youth Network Success and Mentoring, wanted to thank you guys for your leadership and thank you as well for proclaiming January is a National Mentoring Month in Snoqualmie Valley. We're also grateful for the continued support and funding for the work. Youth Success Mentoring has grown since its inception in 2017. We now provide mentors in all 17 schools across Snoqualmie Valley in both Riverview and Snoqualmie Valley school districts, impacting 158 students. And the need for mentors is growing. I'll share my personal story. Been here a long time. We had a number of kids commit suicide over the last handful of years. It's touching to me because I actually work with one of the moms who her son actually had that happen to her. And so I kind of got tired of Facebook and kind of everyone's like sad face. So I was like, I'm going to do something about it. And so I reached out to Heather and got myself involved in mentoring. I was like, absolutely want to get myself involved. So I've had my students since elementary. And the brief story is he would barely open his mouth. He would barely talk to me. We went through COVID. That was difficult. It was all online. To fast forward where we're at today, he's excited to see me. He tells me often, this is the best part of my week is to see you. We talk about girls, school, sports, what Nikes to wear to homecoming. It's flourished into a really nice relationship that hopefully we have well past school. So the impact I know has been great for him, but probably even more for me. And knowing that we're just giving back through Empower has been life-changing. I try to get as many people and friends and family to understand, like it's, you know, we'll all go through that. It only takes 1 hour a week to do the mentoring. So it's not a big hour for Microsoft. So it's not a big expensive time. I can block my calendar out. Mentor takes place at any of the local schools during the day. They're very accommodating to schedules or when they can, you know, find gym space or classrooms to play games or whatnot. And Empower Youth have students that are currently waiting for mentors, whether you're a girl, boy, man, woman. There's a need for it. So if you know anybody that would want to mentor, you get back more than the hour you put in. So all volunteers are trained and given continued support to ensure they can be best to support the youth or mentee that they have. You can find out more information at empoweryouth.network.org. And again, I think on behalf of all of us, we appreciate the help and support. So with that, any questions? Pictures? Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much.
Say thank you for all the work that you do. It does makes a tremendous difference. To your point, you see kids change, and you know, in my own household, I have a child that's very happy when they get to see their mentor. And it's been, I think, 4 years now. And knowing that that relationship will go on through the end of high school and that support and having that non-parent adults that they can meet up with once a week, really makes a difference, especially as kids go through some really challenging years. So thank you for everything that you all do.
And if you're not able to mentor, share it with your network. Because I know I have 5 kids right now in Riverview that are waiting for mentors. So they're sitting there waiting. So please share.
Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is a selection of the council representatives to the Sound Cities Association Public Issues Committee. So as a reminder for council, Councilmember McHenry, not being present, council member has been serving on the Public Issues Committee for the last few years, but Councilmember Schaefer is the alternate. So it is time to select a member and an alternate each year. I will just kind of reiterate for those that forget what the Public Issues Committee does. But Sound Cities Association represents 38 of the 39 cities in King County, with the exception of Seattle. They appoint representatives to almost all of the regional committees that Councilmember McHenry is serving on. And every month, all of the business that goes for all of those committees goes through the Public Issues Committee to be brought back to our councils for discussion when there's action items. And it's a really important role as well in staying connected with our cities in King County. The meeting is only 2 hours a month. It is Wednesday evenings. I can't remember, it's the second Wednesday of every month. And then there are a couple months that they don't have meetings during the year typically. So with that, is there anyone that would like to serve as representative?
Oh, I just want to speak, is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
I wanted to speak.
Well, I wanted to offer that,
Sorry.
I just wanted to say there is a meeting tomorrow night. And they also said that if, you know, for tomorrow night, because they're trying to get quorum, that if it's not, it doesn't have to be the 2025 representative, like just if you send whoever. It's virtual, they've mostly been virtual, pros, cons to that, but I mean, driving to Renton, it, you know, when it's in person, though the last one was in Mercer Island, which is not too bad for us. I'm happy to serve as a solid alternate if somebody really wants to take it on. I could also, you know, keep doing it if somebody wants to try out alternate. I just wanna, and I can also not do it at all if there's 2 other people that wanna do it, I've done it. So if you have questions, I'm happy to answer my, give my opinion too. So just wanted to throw that out there.
So this is something else we talked about, I'm actually open to either the representative or the alternate. I do have a conflict tomorrow, so it's a little last minute, just because I have a work commitment, but I would be open on, I think it's an opportunity to get a little more familiar with some of the issues that we discussed here, and I have not been involved in any regional committees other than the association meetings, so it's an opportunity to do a little more of that. But again, if someone else is really diehard about wanting to be the representative, I'm happy to serve as an alternate as well.
Is there anyone else?
I think we all just took a step back.
Okay, well, in that case, by kind of acclamation, unless council has objections, I'll take that as Councilmember Mercer has the appointment for the primary role. And then is there anyone willing to serve the alternate role?
I will serve in the alternate role.
All right, anyone else interested, or are we gonna have a showdown here tonight?
I go or something.
Go ahead.
So you said you can't go tomorrow night, would you be able to go virtually from 7 to 9?
7 to 9 tomorrow, I think so.
Okay, because if not, I could just do that one. Really clearing stuff up.
I know.
Are the meetings virtual by, still virtual?
Mostly, they've started doing, tried to do some quarterly in person.
It's hard to go back for part-time elected officials in Virginia.
Yeah. Especially a lot of traffic.
Yeah.
Excellent. So is everyone in favor of Councilmember Semple being the alternate? Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you both and congratulations to all 3 of you.
I'm just reading out the calendar.
I know. It's already fall. All right, Oh, Councilmember Suffolk.
Is there a meeting notice going out or something?
There will be, so our clerk or Cynthia will send an email to the Sound City Association tomorrow with the new representatives, and they'll make sure that you get on the email list and make sure that you get all of the meeting notices and agendas.
And actually, can I just say this really quick? If it's okay, there was an email because they were trying to confirm quorum, so if I can just reply on that and include you two so that they know somebody will be there. And then confirm.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, for taking that off of my to-do
Yeah.
list. Councilmember McHenry.
All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to existing business. We are moving right along, let's not good here. Agenda Bill 25-03, the Parks, Trails and Open Spaces Plan, for discussion and or decision, Director Thomas.
Good evening, Mayor, council members of the community. Tonight is kind of the last hurrah of just over 1 year's worth of work on the Park, Trails and Open Space Plan. It's been over a decade since we did the update. A few of you in this room have attended either advisory committees or our open houses. The Planning Commission and Council both held hearings in December. And on December 11th, the Planning Commission recommended that council approve the Parks, Trails and Open Space Plan. And so this evening, we're asking council to approve that document.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I move to approve Agenda Bill 2503 for the adoption of Resolution 2501 approving the 2024 Parks, Trails and Open Space Plan.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes unanimously. Congratulations, Director Thomas.
Thank you.
And did you say 10 years or did you say 16 years?
It's been over 10 years.
It's
It was
been 16.
2009, yes.
I do
I
remember.
didn't wanna
very
like kind of bury it that way, but yeah.
It was one of my first policy
Yes, it was.
documents as planning
Yeah.
commissioner.
Thank you.
Going down memory lane tonight, clearly.
For sure.
All right, next item of business is considerations on revenue options for city financing, and I will let City Administrator make that lead.
Yes, good evening, members of the community, council, mayor, Cynthia McNabb, city administrator. So I don't have a presentation tonight. This agenda item, and I'll be discussing it with Mayor Pro Tem Mercer, Mayor Pro Tem McHenry, and I, when we meet weekly to discuss what council would like on the agenda, I thought it would be important to continue to keep this on as a continuing agenda item as council thinks about how we will, how council will make decisions on whether or not there are levy votes, sales tax votes in the future. So for tonight, the ask for city council is to kind of set the stage for the next meeting's discussion. Is there data, is there information that you want prepared ahead of the next meeting to begin that conversation on whether council should vote to go out for a levy for things like the school resource officer or a parks levy or a police levy or a public safety sales tax. So this is just an introduction to those conversations. In order to make the August agenda or August ballot, we need to have decisions fairly well in place by the end of March. Because then it begins preparing the public statements for ballots, hiring someone to help us with that campaign. And so ideally, council is ready to make a decision about any revenue options that you would put to the ballot in 2025 by the end of March. So we'll continue again with Mayor Pro Tem Mercer's recommendation to the agenda to have this as an agenda item. But I wanted to start that conversation. What does council need from administration to begin those discussions?
Councilmember Kupel?
I think a good starting point for me might be if you were to can't get words out to frame it properly. If you were to show us where like the property tax increases going away this year, if we were to keep that at the same level. The word one. Like when a school levy expires and we redo a new one for the same amount, it's not exactly new money that taxpayers are looking to spend, it's just continuing the level.
So the way this last, so yeah, I think I understand what you're asking for. The way the levy for the school resource officer functioned, it was a levy increase for a variety of things.
Right.
At the school resource officer, it had IT, and Director Thomas reminded me it had a third element, maybe something with Big Rock ball field.
Yes. I was working over here.
Okay, but it was for very discrete items, right, a little different than so the fire did. Right, we're gonna come back to voters this year. And theirs is a continuing resolution, which means it's not new money, but they will be asking the voters to continue the level of funding that they've had for, I don't know, several decades. So this was a little different than those levies that aren't asking for new money, but are asking to continue.
Right.
So one thing we could show is what will happen to the things that were funded with, the expiration of the levy. We could do that.
And with the property tax as well, for funding for the clip. Is that what we're talking about too, or? Are we?
I'm not sure that I understand the ask.
I think what Councilmember Kufel's getting at is, we know that our property tax isn't keeping up with inflation. And I think she's looking for the intersection between the levy and what we need.
Right.
To stabilize budget.
Cause I thought part of the discussion, correct me if I'm remembering wrong, but I thought part of the discussion for the clip that we were coming to is the property tax where we're at is going away at the end of this year. Whereas if we were able to keep it at the same level going forward or, increase it. It's not new funding, it's not a new tax, it's just continuing the current tax.
So we typically have so every year in November, we do the property tax. We assess the property tax, whether or not we're gonna take the full property tax, take the 1% or bank it. And traditionally, the city has done that, so that's the 1% tax. I don't know that there's been a discussion for this biennium, and this biennium is built upon the assumption that we're going to continue to take the 1%.
Okay.
So that's not something that I presumed that would be up for discussion about whether or not every year we would take the annual 1%, because historically, we have in the budget is built on that assumption.
Okay. Oh, then that's fine.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Mayor.
Oh, no, it's fine.
That's a good question. Mayor Pro Tem Mercer and then Councilmember Isaacson.
Yeah, and again, this is sort of early in the process, so, and I have not gone through a levy process before, so this will be new to me as well. I think for me, it's sort of a trifecta of things. It's the kind of the immediate impact of the expiration, so that's just sort of highlighting the gaps. I think it's a very entry or early look at what we might want to fund, because to your point, it can be to address those gaps, but it can be expanded to cover other shortfalls. And I think that's where Councilmember Kufel gets into play a little bit, because the levies run longer to beyond the fiscal cliff, that there will be some offsets in there. And then really, not that I want to front load this, but it might be good to just have a high level understanding of the levy process in terms of, because a lot of this is around community engagement and education well before. With similar timelines and deadlines, but again, not going too deep, that's not my ask, but just really a high level view of what sort of the levy process would look like if we decided to move forward. I know that's not sort of the only, I guess that is the primary funding mechanism. How we structure it and what's in it is really the variables, but if there's other things beyond that, those would be interesting too, but I don't want to create too much work up front.
No, this is important work. So the levy process has a couple components, I think, all of which would be really helpful to understand early on. So there's kind of the timeline of if you wanted it on the August ballot, you know, when do you have to make decision making? What does that decision making look like? And then if you, for instance, many cities this last go around, you know, they had initiatives that failed in the August ballot and decided to put them again in one form or another on the November ballot. What would that look like to make those decisions? There's also a component of some ballot initiatives can only be on certain ballots. So for instance, the public safety sales tax cannot be on the February ballot. It has to be, it can be on a special ballot, it has to be on a general ballot. So I think understanding where you can place things in the next 2-year cycle would probably be a fairly important piece of information to have. And I can prepare that by the next meeting. Oscar, did you have a comment? I thought I saw a hand wave.
No, I agree with what you stated, so yes.
Councilmember Isaacson, and then Councilmember McKinley.
So the clarity, I think for me, first off, is the property levy tax of 1% that we're talking about. There's movement to try to move it to 3% or to try to keep up with inflation. That's not something we're looking at putting on the ballot. That's something
No.
state level.
Yeah, we couldn't do that. It would
right?
violate the state law right now for us to do
So
that.
I just wanted to make sure this is something that with Councilmember people's questions, because we're talking about whole different levies than that.
Yeah.
What I would like, you already answered a portion of it, is like, when can these be done? And then I would like a way to know how we can get to our citizens, what's coming, right? If we put on the ballot in March, one levy, and they don't know we as a city are planning on levying more levies on them in the fall, you know, I got a feeling that might feel bad, you know, it's like, oh, ask for money for this, when they're asking for some more money, especially if it's new levies that they aren't used to just continuing with. If there's a way that you could present to us how the city is going to articulate that with citizens before we as council just say, let's increase this one levy because we know we need it, and then in the fall, we're gonna ask for some more money that they're not used to getting. The continuing levies is probably easier for them to understand, education, the things that we put on ballots, but new ones especially, I would love to know how we're gonna get that started.
City Administrator.
The other thing that I'm doing, which is really hard to assess, though, I'm trying to keep in contact with the other taxing agencies. So I meet every other month with the fire chief to get an understanding of what taxpayer initiatives they're going out with. And I just had a really great meeting with them about timing the different public safety, not police, kind of fire and emergency management voter initiatives, whatever the city of Duval decides to do, because you know, we are estimating in a single year 3 different fire focus or EMS focused votes in county parks. And you know, I'm still in contact with quite a few folks at KCLS, and I know that they're thinking about voter initiatives, and so we want to make sure that we're well placed and not presenting to our residents just complete tax fatigue.
Right.
So it's hard, you know, everybody's very cautious right now, like, so if you go, well, maybe we won't go, but if they go, maybe we'll go. And so it's a stance. I'm trying to maintain my relationships with these different agencies that would potentially put voter initiatives on the same ballot as us. So that's something I'm attending to.
And I think to address council members' point about awareness, community awareness. There's a long runway between when the city council has to decide that it gets put on the ballot to when it actually shows up on the ballot. And there are specifics around how we can communicate and how we can't. So first and foremost, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty confident we did public hearings before we put the last levy on the ballot. So there was opportunity, multiple opportunities between council meetings and public comment and public hearings to start with, for folks to come and share feedback. There were newsletters that went out. Once it's on the ballot, then all communication except just the core facts that have been created before the council takes a vote, is all that the city can do. So then it goes to independent pro-con committees have to form themselves and write the voter's guide statement and do all of the work, and that the city is out of it other than asking factual questions. Council members at that point can go out and do their own campaigning on their personal family, they can't do it. So it really takes the city, that is one of the challenges, but it's also one of the big checks and balances of keeping politics out of the decision by city staff and city officials once it reaches that point of the ballot.
Well, one of the things that I was thinking about, in terms, and this, you might have discussed it, while I was gone this evening, in the city administrator report, is planning for the retreat. If you're thinking about ballot initiatives for the upcoming year, we might want to consider an outside presenter to come in to talk to council about the do's and don'ts of running ballot initiatives, like when is it advocacy, when is it appropriate advocacy, and when is it the committees have the sole voice to, you know, make sure that the democratic process and these initiatives run smoothly. So it was one of the things I was thinking about for that agenda on the retreat.
Councilmember McHenry.
So a couple of things, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think I always still look to our sales tax is lower than any surrounding areas really. And so anywhere we can maximize and add to that, it's still a drop in the bucket for those gaps we need to fill, but I think we need to look at multiple things and go for everything that we can. I know years ago we talked about a public safety sales tax. And again, like I think I was on one, I was on the little committee for the transportation benefit district. And so I understand a little bit of how that process works. And, you know, we've been able to get a nice chunk each year, you know, to be doing overlays and small projects. So again, it's not the end all be all solution, but every little bit we can do. I like sales tax too, because, you know, it doesn't hurt somebody at the grocery store really, or, you know, on those non-taxable items. And then in terms of levies, I think I was not on council when that 3-part levy went, and I think lessons learned though, because I was still a community member at that time, was they did not like having multiple things in one. And I think we're still seeing that lesson in surrounding areas that are trying to do combined levies for different categories and not doing great. So while I think we could focus on the things that are really important to our community, like parks and police, and do levies for that, I really believe we should keep them separate. And then how that overlays with what other agencies are doing, I mean, it's interesting. We'll have to really look at it and strategize, but at some point we may not have a choice with our timing either. So I want to be really considerate where we can and set ourselves up for success while realizing we may not ultimately have a choice of when we have to go for it.
City administrator.
So I am, and some of it came up in the budget and some of the slides I presented, but the jurisdictions that attempted to do kind of funding for the government, and Everett's the best example. Those initiatives failed because it was like, well, we want this for the library and this for the arts and this community event, but some for the police and some maybe for a park. Those kitchen sink approaches did not do well in 2024. Because I think it does speak a little bit to the question of, well, if you need it for everything, what are you doing to manage your costs and plan more effectively versus, and Chief and I have had a number of conversations about this. If council decides to do a public safety initiative, whether it's sales tax or levy, being really clear with the voters, you know, your contribution in, for instance, raise property taxes would mean, you know, continuation of a school resource officer, not just fund the police department, but real concrete things that the taxpayers can say, oh, I value this, so I will vote for it, not just, you know, fund your city because you should.
Yeah. And that's why, you know, transportation taxes have continued to remain intact despite challenges. It's why Climate Commitment Act remained intact despite the challenges of the initiatives. And so being very clear and prescriptive on, you know, what is included in that package is important. That's what the legislature does with every transportation package they put out, is it's for specific projects. And that's really important for that transparency, and also with the exception of extreme inflation or things that are outside of the government's control, you know, there are occasionally those impacts that make you not able to fund it, but most of those are unpredictable. Councilmember Isaacson.
Yeah, it's just for clarification on message, or I wasn't asking to see, to, you know, violate the process strategy.
Oh, no,
What I'm asking
I
is
just wanna
exactly
try to-
kind of what you're articulating better, is what can we get from the city that we know is going to be coming to us to ask for those timelines? What other levy? I know it seems, it's like me as a parent, you know, I think I know what I want my kids to do. I think if I don't tell them, or I tell it in a way that doesn't articulate well, you are in grassroots knowing what's coming, you tell us, we see it in budgets, and then we come back, you know, 2 weeks later and we're trying to remember it all. So if I would like, as we're going through, because what is coming? That way, when I do talk to the citizens in my neighborhood in our town, and say, hey, and they ask a question about it. And but by the way, we also have a levy coming on SRO maybe. They may want to vote for just that, but I don't want them to know it's coming, I don't want them to vote for something in March, and then in November, feel like they had to choose now that that's more important than, maybe they want to say no to whatever in March, because they want to say their vote for their funding, for their money for something else. That's what I'll be able to get my hands around there.
Anything else on that? Great. You got any? I do, excellent. Great feedback, council, thank you for that. Next up is a discussion on accepting donations. City Administrator with that.
Thank you. Yeah, we're gonna have to listen to me talk here for a little bit. So this was just one of those things that an opportunity to look at policy that we currently have and then potentially implement that policy in a more concrete manner. So since 2013, the city has had a donation policy. And that largely is, I have only seen it used once, and that was for somebody who wanted to donate a sign for the police department. But the policy itself actually is good policy. In the packet, I included some other cities' donation policies. Ours is consistent with almost every other city that I looked at. So I made no suggested changes to our current policy from 2013. The only question now is if council has any questions before we begin to implement our donation policy, with the idea that the community can donate small amounts if they desire to, if they want to support a particular special event, for instance. This really is thinking about how to build community support for special events, along with the sponsorship package that we put together that was also in the council packet. Being far more strategic about how we pay for our special events, and hopefully to some degree making sure that we're covering, if not the full cost, a good portion of the cost through sponsorship or donation. So looked at the existing donation policy, no changes recommended. I did, and you'll see it in the council packet, create a draft donation form. This will allow us at City Hall to accept donations for accounting and record keeping purposes and to offer receipts to community members who might want to take a deduction on their taxes. And again, somebody could walk into City Hall and say, you know, I have $5, it's really important for me to maintain Light Up Duval. I wanna offer this for special events. Or it could be, I wanna offer $50,000 and cover all the events. I don't know if that would happen, it'd be lovely if it did. But this just offers us an implementing tool for doing it because we haven't really implemented this donation policy or publicized that we have it. I created a draft flyer and Clerk Patero, I don't know if we can pull up that flyer, that we would have at City Hall. We would bring the flyer to events for small non-sponsorship donations. And we would put it on the website along with the donation form and publicize it on social media for folks who again might be in paying their utility bill and say, hey, I really would like to maintain Summer Stage, or I'd like to have bigger acts at Summer Stage, can I donate? So this is just basically a mechanism to implement our current donation policy. And that's what I have for tonight. Happy to answer any questions.
Councilmember McHenry and then Kupo.
So my only question is, I think this all looks great, I'm really excited about it. If I wanted to donate like $10,000, can I donate 5,000 twice, or is it a cumulative in terms of the cap, the 5,000 cap to bring to council? And then also, could I donate 5,000 or 4,999, if, I don't know which is the exact cutoff, but could I donate to different events and it wouldn't trigger the council approval, or is it from one person, or I was just curious about that part.
Well, we've never really had the opportunity to interpret the policy.
Be a great problem to have, right?
Here's what I would say for transparency purposes. I think council should be aware of any large donation to the city. And right now, there is a bit of a, there's first of all a cap at $5,000 unless the mayor can accept. But over $5,000, council needs to see it, and council needs to say, yeah, that's something that we would like city government to do. Is you also don't want to accept a donation for something that the majority of council doesn't approve of in terms of a government activity. So, I guess I would say if somebody walked in with a check tomorrow for $5,000 and then 6 months later for $4,999 and did it again the next time, I think probably what we would want to do is make sure that we're reporting back to council any significant donations, not the $5, not the $10, but even if it was under the threshold, I would feel an obligation to come to council, even though it's not required by policy to say, okay, we have $20,000 from a single person this year in 4 different installments for X, Y, and Z. And, we would even under 5,000, the mayor still needs to approve the activity. So that we're not accepting donations for things that we just shouldn't be in the business of accepting donations for. Ideally, the way we would advertise it, and this is the way that I've structured the flyer that we would use as advertising, is really around special events. It's around family fun events. Not anything that is not already contemplated in the biennial budget for activities of the city.
Thanks. Councilmember Kupo and then Isaacson.
To that point, that you're gonna be doing, you're expecting this to be a family friendly events. We live in an age where, because I see it all the time, people want to pay online. They want a Venmo. Are we gonna have the wherewithal to do that, like, instead of?
Not yet.
Not yet.
So, the first thing I did was talk to Finance Director McMahon and say, can we accept Venmo? And we don't right now have the structure to do it, so it does have to be check, cash with a receipt.
That might be something new.
Yeah, we would like to get to a place where we can accept online payments, but we don't have the structure right now for it.
And I would say several years ago, my first couple years as mayor, I did find programs that would meet the financial requirements of being able to comply with and be able to do that. Then COVID hit.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that software still would meet our compliance and then working with our systems either. So I'm sure there's an option out there.
There are, and the model that I looked at that seems to work, that's a city Venmo option, is the Blueberry Patch in Bellevue. Is a city-owned vendor, and you can pay that by Venmo and by QR code. So I'm gonna reach out to Bellevue to see what system they use, but right now, our financials aren't set up for Venmo or anything like that.
Is there someone else? Oh, you, and then I have a question.
If we had a scenario where someone was donating a large sum of money, let's say towards Summer Stage, which is one, does the city usually just tack it on top of the budget that we approved, or does the city then take 10,000 out of that we approved in the budget and put it in the general fund or somewhere we use somewhere else?
So if it is something that is contemplated in the budget, so for instance, let's use Summer Stage as the best example. So we go out every year, and this year we're doing a bigger push for corporate sponsorships for Summer Stage. So if we got corporate sponsorships and a large donation where someone said the intent of this donation is to pay for Summer Stage, we would return that money back to the general fund.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
This was more, I appreciate it's a fairly straightforward policy, the donation form is nice. I think the only question I had, you had obviously the right to refusal. If the group didn't align or there was some sensitivity. There is also language on the donation form around, best effort to use the gift in a way as intended, creating a little flexibility. Is there any risk around severability or revocability or language that needs to be included post-consumption? Like, obviously, sometimes you hear, and it's happened obviously in the academia with a lot of people pulling back their endowments because they're unhappy with the way things are doing. I don't know in a municipal environment the same way, but once the funds have been consumed or applied, that the ability to revoke said gift, or even if there is an ability to revoke prior to use based on change. I was just gonna ask if that's something you even thought about. As you said, I'm probably asking a problem in search,
Right.
We haven't had this problem, but just curious if that's for you or for Oscar, if there's any exposure.
I don't know that the current policy anticipates that. I think, if we got a large donation that was above the 5,000, we would probably want to create a separate agreement that had a little more legal bones around it that would include revocation clauses. We dealt with this a little bit at the library because the KCLF has a massive inventory of art. And artists would donate different artworks that sometimes they would either want to bring back into their private collections or gift in perpetuity. And so sometimes we dealt with that. I don't know. I can't imagine a situation where we would have fungible items being donated, but the policy in the form certainly anticipates that somebody might walk in and say, I want to give you a Lamborghini, you can sell it if you want and use the money for however you want. But I think big gifts like that, we'd probably want a paper with a little more specificity than what this anticipates. Is somebody walking in with a $10 bill and
Just to
saying,
sort of keep it simple, because
I'm trying,
we create a problem that we have to
Yeah.
actually adjust for, and that's fine. I was just kind of curious if that's an issue, not necessarily with our city, but I can see like a bigger city like Bellevue, where they're getting a larger festival, or I have a friend that does the fireworks show for Snoqualmie. A lot of that is funded actually through private donations. The city pays for very little of it, and just, in terms of this one. So I appreciate,
I haven't
the framing that
anticipated that,
you said.
Any further discussion on this? All right, let's go
Thank
ahead and move on to the discussion on the Economic and Development and Tourism Program by City Administrator McMahon.
So tonight, we have one key action item, but wanted to provide an update on some of the economic development activities that were in the prior biennial budget and then what we have planned for the upcoming year. So there are a couple things that were rolled over into that were planned for 2024, but will now be in the 2025 budget. And we had talked about that, but this was an opportunity to put it on a single slide. So the two murals, the Duval Market mural and the First in Virginia mural, those are already funded. They're already planned. The artwork is already chosen by the Cultural Commission. We're just waiting for good weather. So we're hoping that those will be done May, June timeframe. One thing that we want to do when we get these murals up and the artwork done is possibly through a Port of Seattle grant, is ask for a videographer to do a tourism video with all this new vibrant artwork throughout the city. So we're hoping maybe that might, we'll put in for a grant and with the possibility of the August timeframe having some really good content around the city to do that video. Depot Park, we're still doing this built out stage. So previous reports out to city council. The Economic Development Subcommittee approved $15,000, so when you go down to Depot Park, there's that little bump out. That's going to have a shelter, a stage with, it has power right now, but we're going to increase the power supply so we can have an amp down there. With the thought that that's gonna be a small celebration performance stage for, you know, somebody with a guitar and an amp. So that's still planned. We're going to need a design and building permit, and then we can purchase some materials for that. I'm gonna save that direction needed to last. One thing that didn't get done from the 2024 or 2023-2024 biennium were those large banner poles on Big Rock. They ended up coming in so far beyond what we anticipated that that project didn't get done. If council's interested in rolling over funds from, it can't be ARPA because we've used all of our ARPA funds, from some other pocket of money, we can do so, but the cost ended up being, you know, close to $160,000 for banner poles on Big Rock. It just didn't, I think the Economic Development Subcommittee didn't think that that was the best use of resources for that. However, we do have planned to do small banner poles in this city at way less money that council approved at the December 3rd council meeting. So we will have more opportunities for publicity of our special events. They're just not gonna be on a big banner pole on Big Rock. We do have plans, so you met our state lobbyists this evening. We also have federal lobbyists who are working with us as a consortium with the group we met tonight. And I am working with them on a National Endowment for the Arts grant that has economic development considerations. We're looking at full renovation of the Depot building as potentially one of the things that we put in for. But we have a whole host of items that could meet the funding requirements for the NEA grant, and so more to come once we put together a grant application. We're gonna ask for quite a bit of money for the arts, so that will come to council, but we do have an opportunity to get you know, quite a bit of money for, and specifically for arts that lead to economic development activities. We're still processing 2 awards, grant awards for 2024. DFA Sandblast and March of the Vegetables just gave us their invoices, so right in the nick of time to meet our end of year accounting requirements. So we're processing those, but the rest of the 2024 grants have been paid to the grant recipients. Which brings us to the direction that I'm hoping council can give tonight. So traditional, or well, not traditionally, we've only done it once. No, twice. So last year, January 15th-ish was the date that we opened the Economic Development and Tourism Grant Program for applicants. We did not budget for that in this biennium. And so we can still open the grant program, and if a subcommittee council or the full council is interested in some of the applications, they could approve them and do a budget amendment to approve those grants. But currently, there's no money in that program. So my ask of council is, do you wanna open the grant program and see what you get? Have a subcommittee of council, as it's done in the past, assess the applications and decide how much you wanna award on the condition that you would need to do a budget amendment to make those awards.
Councilmember Shaver, then Isaacson.
I guess the question I have just be, you know, essentially nixed the large banner pole because of the outrageous costs. Were there funds left over from the year that we rolled over that did not get spent or is not yet committed?
So in 2024, the remainder of the funds, they were strategic general funds, so they just went back into the general fund.
Okay, and how much was that? Do you?
It was approximately $90,000 that just,
Approximately 90.
which we had reserved for the banner poles, but the banner poles came in at 160.
And is that $90,000 part of our budget commitment?
No.
Okay.
It just went back into the general fund.
Okay, good. No, that, I think that's important for, for myself and all of council to understand that this, we would not be, if we do, reopen the Economic Development Tourism Grant Program, we would not be, impacting our budget. Is that a true statement?
It would, well,
Negatively impacting our budget.
to open the program, no. But if you said yes to any of them, it would, because you would have to do a budget amendment for the amount that you approve.
Okay. And it's just still would just come out of the general fund.
It would be general fund dollars.
Okay.
And we have offset revenue, so it would essentially reduce the balance in this.
Yeah, we don't have any revenue like ARPA or other funding. So it would be general fund.
Okay.
Councilmember Isaacson?
I would, that's for opening it, see what we get, because we're not getting any money. And like I said, we look at where we are, when we get them, how much someone's asking for. We know we're at a tight budget between 25 and 26, we can still say how to do it, but we could at least reach out, see what people are asking for, and we get answering that way. We would love to, but we're doing the right thing in the city and your council we can't prove that we don't have a plan. I think at least hearing from people who need money is valuable. They at least say we're wanting to hear from them. We want it when we can. I mean, we can all round table and discuss, hey, here's where we are. We know we're in the hole in 26. We want to take some of the $9,000 that maybe don't do small goals, give it to someone who needs it. I don't know, it's just my 2 cents on. I would like to open it personally. See if we get it on staff and support.
And we can support it.
Councilmember Kubel.
How much were the small poles, the small banner poles?
Director Thomas, do you recall how much?
Yes, they're about $2,500 a piece, but that is. How many would be? 2, that's what we budgeted. And that is with actual staff doing the majority of the work, so the $2,500 is for the physical components. That's for the 2, so it would be 50 for 2,500. 2,500 a piece. Plus staff time. Plus staff. Cause we're going more with what we have at Winville Duval Road, which is the, kind of the smaller banners. Steve and administration are working on the location, of the 2 poles. We'd really like to put one off the Big Rock Road for sure, somewhere in that vicinity, and maybe one more on Main Street at the south end of town.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer?
Yeah, I just more had a process question. In the case where we open a grant program where we don't actually have allocated funds yet, I mean, there are other things that come up that we balance the budget. How is that message to the grant submitters? I mean, in some ways I could see this as motivating because, they're gonna net need to be high value or things that we acknowledge as offering a benefit to the city or the community that we would then fund. But I was just curious from a transparency perspective, because there's some work involved in preparing a grant application. I wouldn't necessarily want it to be, throwaway work. I think there's an expectation if we see things of value that we would in fact follow through. But I was just curious from a staff perspective, how we communicate that out to potential grant submitters.
I think we would have to be transparent to say there's currently not a budget for economic development activities. However, council is interested in receiving submissions and, should an application meet the requirements of the grant policy. Now, we haven't been super rigorous with some of our awards. So I think we would say, any funding of this would need to be, through the approval process and then through a budget amendment. So different organizations can decide how much work they want to put into it. There's also the opportunity, so I would say some organizations could also put in grant applications for in-kind, which would not hit the general fund, but could be fee waivers. And that might be worth considering too, so, you know, permit fee waivers, banner pole fee waivers, facility rental waivers is another way that the city accepts economic development grant applications, but isn't just an outlay of money.
Thank you.
Councilmember McHenry.
Yeah, that's what my big hesitation with opening it is. It feels like a false promise, but I do trust that you would word it very bluntly that, cause it's a lot of work to do the grant applications, you know? So I was trying to think, is there some in-between thing we could do? Like, we're interested in proposals, but then it's tough because they may not answer all those questions ahead of time that we need to know to even properly consider it. So I think if it was worded really carefully, and I love adding that to, you know, we always easy to forget the in-kind, the staff time, the fee waivers, stuff like that really adds up. And a lot of times, that's some of the biggest help we can provide that makes a pretty big impact for some of these organizations. So I would cautiously support it. I just don't want to I don't want it to ever be like, like we don't have anything budgeted for it. But we're always interested to hear, and short of doing some kind of survey and surveys, I think, you know, this could be a way to kind of ask for proposals. As I think adding in that timing piece too would be really important because it would be a little bit longer. It's not like we have pre-budgeted money.
Right.
So like this can't be an event happening next month that they want to like, unless it's an in-kind potential, maybe there's shorter notice there, but yeah, and then I'm not gonna give up. I think long-term we'll need large banner poles on Big Rock. I don't think it's in the cards for anytime soon. I think costs will just keep going up, but you know, I just don't think it's worth pursuing right now. But of course, I think that's a big thing we would need to do it at some point in the future, maybe 5 years or something, I don't know.
Go ahead.
The mayor and I are going to the Chamber of Commerce meeting in March. With the goal of asking the business community what economic development activities are they interested in the city undertaking that they feel would have, you know, some measurable impact on economic development here in the city. More probably in line of setting us up for potential grant applications than budget amendments, but there could be something that comes from that conversation too that council is interested in pursuing.
Councilmember Supple.
Yeah, is there like a deadline for submission of grants? Do you have something in mind now, or?
So last year we opened both the human services grants and the economic development and tourism grants right around January 15th with the goal of, I think the deadline was in March so that the subcommittees could vote to approve them. Particularly important on tourism grants because most of the activities that City Council awarded money to last year were summer and early fall events. So we need to do it early, which is why I'm hoping to get direction tonight.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Just to be clear and possibly remind the rest of the council, the economic development tourism grants are only open to nonprofits. That would still be correct, all right?
Yeah.
So not open to private businesses. You know, with that in mind, I actually either way, I'd be in favor of still going forward with this and opening the program. Again, as we discussed, I'm sure the wording will be clear, so the expectations will be set. And depending on the response we get, it may make sense to kind of reactivate the Economic Development Committee to, you know, look at the grants first before we bring those to the council as a whole.
Thank you. Any other feedback from council? Just to confirm, I'm hearing rough consensus to open the grants with the transparency and see what comes in and then have a discussion. Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right, let's move on to our last item of business tonight, muffler and sand nuisance enforcement options with City Administrator Mike Nab and our attorney, Mr. Oscar Ray.
Thank you. So yesterday I sent out an email. Well, let's back up. Councilmember Schaefer had in October emailed council asking for attorney review of some information regarding speed cameras and muffler enforcement in the city. Information on speed cameras was included in the October 15, 2024 council packet, which was a memo from our chief of police. That memo has also been included in this packet, as well as the state information on readiness for speed cameras. So that information is in your packet. And then Councilmember Schaefer asked for attorney review. Yesterday, I emailed council showing our city attorney's review of the information that Councilmember Schaefer asked to be reviewed. So next slide. So wanted to, Mayor Pro Tem wanted to make sure that we talked about these issues at council. So I've broken up the conversation into two discrete categories. So the first is around speed cameras. So there are a lot of rules around speed cameras. Your council packet has, I think, the Are You Ready? I'm paraphrasing the title of that document. But Are You Ready for Speed Cameras is about a 28-page document. It's a pretty robust program. So I just am pulling out a couple key portions from the chief's memo and from that document for council consideration. First, the cost is approximately $5,000 per camera per month. Each deployment requires at a minimum 2 cameras and then power at the location that the cameras are deployed. The city must pass an ordinance to authorize the use of speed cameras because of the privacy concerns. Most cities that use speed cameras, and luckily we have peers in neighboring cities who have a lot of experience with this, so talked to both Monroe and Bothell. They've had a robust and comprehensive public outreach and engagement process prior to installing speed cameras of about a year of talking to the community because so much information is collected on those speed cameras. And then finally, the pullout that I wanted to note is that the state law requires a location analysis that has to be done by an external consultant. Well, it doesn't, the state law doesn't require that it's done by an external consultant. The work is typically done by an external consultant. That state law requires that we engage in an equity analysis for where we put the speed cameras. So you have to look at livability, accessibility, the economics, education, and environmental health of the community, where when in the analysis of where to locate the speed camera. You have to show a demonstrated need for the traffic cameras based on the travel of vulnerable road users, evidence of vehicle speeding, rate of collision, reports showing near collision, and anticipated or actual effectiveness or actual ineffectiveness or infeasibility of other mitigating measures, which means we have to try to do other stuff before we put the speed cameras in. So that's what's required for speed cameras. So I just want to pause there. All the information on speed cameras that you could possibly need is in the packet. Before I leave off for questions, I'm going to turn over to Chief on the issue of speed cameras. Have anything you want to add?
No, I was involved in the process of implementing them in Bothell and know the process we go through. There are a lot of questions that come up from the community. It's really clear that we had to make sure that we spent that time with the outreach to make sure that we understood that what data was going to be collected and how that data is going to be used. The other issue that you have to always kind of figure out with speed cameras is you set up that top cost of approximately $5,000 per camera per month. That is a cost that's contracted out to the city that employs those cameras. Whether you have the number of violations to enforce, you still have that bill coming in at least for each section, $10,000 per month, $120,000 a year, whether you get any reimbursement for that or not. And that's always a thought to think about when you have a community that, fortunately for us in Bothell, we have the volume, the traffic volume that allowed for that to happen. And we did have some of the data that dealt with collision data to help support that. And we did make some other choices prior to the implementation of the cameras where we did some mitigation, but it is something to consider if you ever decide to go towards that route. Because you really have to have that traffic volume. And it's not just the number of cars that travel through that area, it's the number of violations that occur through that area that helps fund that camera being used.
Councilmember Schaefer?
Yeah, no, thank you, Chief, and thank you for your memo, a little bit earlier too, by the way, that was very, very informative. And helped me understand, the pros and cons. And Oscar, thanks for your analysis, as well. Again, I think that, that was very helpful. I've also read, the state regulations, themselves to get a more in-depth understanding and, essentially based on all that, the fact that it would cost a minimum of $120,000 a year, plus a good part of an officer's time, plus upfront costs. We'd probably be talking, I don't know, $250,000 or something like that. I just don't think that makes any sense, at all. So, although I was very interested in this, I certainly didn't understand the costs involved and the time it would take away from a police officer as well. So I'm no longer supporting this idea, and we can have more discussion on if anyone feels it's worth the time. But I personally have actually lost my interest in speed cameras in particular. Noise is another matter. I think we're gonna talk about that excessively.
Same thing. I'm not against speed cameras. It is a tool that can be used to help correct some habits from the public. It does have some inherent issues associated with it, such as the aspect that I've gotten them, somebody else in my family have gotten, I'm sure someone else there has probably gotten one from someplace else, but it's usually not for 2 weeks after that happens and you go, well, it sure would have been nice to be able to know when I did it at the time and go through that process. And I think that one of the things that a number of jurisdictions are finding is the state allows and the court system allows for an individual to fill out an affidavit claiming that they weren't the driver for that vehicle and that they don't have to identify the driver of that vehicle. And so the costs associated that kind of accelerate because the issue is filed in courts. Now we have a filing fee that we have to pay associated with that we don't have any recourse in getting any money back from it. So
That's a good point. It's a little of that, by the way. All they have to do is file an affidavit and there's no fine.
Does anyone else have any thoughts or feedback, or is council in concurrence with Councilmember Weaver to not look at this particular issue? All right, let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, next slide. So mufflers. So the first thing is we had talked at a previous meeting about whether city council was interested in hosting a public meeting regarding muffler enforcement, where we could invite the community with a map of the city and say, tell us where the hotspots are. So just putting that out there. Council packet did include the WAC the Washington Administrative Code associated with enforcement requirement for muffler violations. So in addition to Emphasis Patrol, which I have to say kudos to our police department. I'm now a resident of Duval. I heard a lot of muffler noise in my neighborhood and it has gone down tremendously. And I happen to know that there have been a couple traffic stops in the city, not me or my family, but there have been recent traffic stops on mufflers that I've heard about. So our enforcement efforts are working. Lots of cities have done social media efforts around muffler enforcement. Other municipalities have enacted ordinances to specifically address vehicle noise. And so I have, and the next slides will show some examples Question, is council interested in pursuing some of the noise ordinance options to address this issue? So there are compression brake ordinances, specific noise decibel levels, and then squealing, screeching tires is kind of where different cities have addressed noise issues relative to cars. So next slide. So this is in the packet. I just offered some examples. So example for compression brake ordinances, Clark County has one on unmuffled compression brakes. I don't sense that that's really our issue in the city, it's more mufflers, but I just wanted to provide kind of the universe of examples. Next slide. Bainbridge Island also has a compression brake ordinance. Next slide. City of Seattle has a pretty robust noise decibel level ordinance. From what I gather from chief, our officers are doing a fairly nice job of identifying which mufflers are not compliant with or without a robust ordinance like the city of Seattle, but I wanted to offer an example of one where a city addressed specific decibel limits. Our current code doesn't have anything like this. And then a couple more examples of next slide. General noise ordinance, which includes vehicle noises. So city of Leavenworth, I've highlighted, this is, other cities have done a larger noise ordinance. I highlighted sections that deal specifically with vehicle noise. So horns and sirens. This is Leavenworth's creation of frequent, repetitive, continuous sounds. Audio systems, and then squealing, screeching, or other sounds from motor vehicles in contact with the ground. So this is kind of like the drag race sounds. Next slide. I think there was one other city that I found that had dealt more specifically with vehicles than our current code allows, which was Offenish had. They deal with brakes, operation of a motor vehicle audio system, squealing, screeching tires. So this is kind of the universe that I found in our state of different things you can do to address vehicle noise. In addition to the WAC that allows for muffler enforcement. So yeah, any questions?
I'm just a basic question, you know, I know, I thought there was already a sign on 203 about compression brakes, there may not be, but as you said, I think it's not a huge problem, I think mostly it's the people with the mufflers who've been intentionally removed or have an issue that we hear sort of shooting down the street. I was really more just curious for the chief, I mean, does the department have the tools? I mean, you can use a decibel meter on your phone, Apple has that on capability, or if the squad cars are, you know, equipped with handheld decibel meters, or if you primarily just make a decision based on best assessment, how it's actually.
The RCW regarding mufflers does not require a decibel meter.
Okay.
Decibel reading, it has to be something that's modified and accessible. And so that gives us, I believe, more leeway than a specific number that they have to reach or a threshold they have to reach. Once you start using some type of implement to evaluate sound or speed, there has to be a certification process to go through that has to be certified at a certain time, certain period of time. So that becomes a little expensive as time goes on for the amount of use. There is an ordinance in the state of Duval that deals with compression brakes, but it's all part of a little bit more of an ordinance regarding noise in general that we have. And so we do get occasional complaints regarding compression brakes when it's not necessarily compression brakes. We've been there when that's happened. It's more just a truck accelerating, and their mufflers have been standards, you know, for that type of a vehicle, and it's very different. But our officers make their stop based on their observations and based on what they hear and see at the time. And it's been pretty productive in the aspect that we have to fill out an affidavit whenever we write a ticket to that person. We have to justify why we've done that, and our observations are pretty key towards making the enforcement stick. The issue that we run into a lot is law enforcement does not have the authority to mandate changes to a vehicle. That is something that a judge would have to do, going through that process. We can enforce the violation, but we can't mandate that somebody goes down and changes the muffler.
But you're focusing on the outlier, which is what makes sense in terms of, the changing the behavior in the community,
And I can tell you that our officers are out there actively looking for that. It is not uncommon for me to come in after the weekend or during the week after a couple of nights to see that officers do some traffic stops, and they let me know that they're doing that process. So it is making a difference. We can't catch them all, but we do our best to kind of change behavior.
Councilmember Isaacson, and then Councilmember McKenna.
So overall, it's more general if we want to, that's what that is, not a specific, more general, so we empower you to use it however we need to for sounds, but my question to you is, do you need anything else in our ordinance to help you enforce noise?
In my opinion, no. In my opinion, I think we have enough leeway to take action, and our officers have pretty strong guidance on that, and that process. Concern I have, and this is just my opinion, based on some information that's been relayed to me regarding legislative action coming up in the state, is there is a potential that there may be some push again during this legislative session to lessen the ability for police officers to take action for non-dangerous or non-violent traffic offenses. Speeding is one of those offenses that we can stop for because there is a traffic collision correlation and injuries associated with that, but equipment violations or expired tabs, registration for the vehicle, those type of violations, we believe, and I believe, that there's going to be a push during this long legislative session to help curb some of that ability for police officers. That would also not allow us to make a more stringent law than the state has, and we have to follow that aspect. So I'm hoping that things stay status quo. But I know that there have been pushes in the past, and I know there was one in the last legislative session that didn't make it. But this is a longer session, and I think that some of those things may come back over.
Just add to that, remember what our lobbyist said about the supermajority as well. That makes the chances of a bill like that more likely to pass this year. Councilmember McHenry?
That was my question as well, but I just wanted to add, for me personally, I'm happy to go down the path of looking at ordinances only if we felt that was needed by our police department. If you feel you have the tools right now to, make the message clear for repeat offenders and things like that, that they get it. And I know you all are big on education too, and I think that's important as well.
I think we have the tools in place and the laws in place to do so. I think that one thing I've noticed since I've been here for over a year is there has to be a little bit more outreach, and that's one of our push this year, to make sure the public has an understanding of what our capabilities are and what we can do. And I think that there are times that sometimes people just absorb what has happened and don't report it, or they believe somebody else has reported it, or it's not uncommon for me to hear about a Facebook post that I don't monitor, that something happened 2 days ago. And so having a little bit more outreach, and that's one of the things that we're going to focus on this year, to kind of understand where those issues are in the neighborhoods, to address those and impact them a little bit more, is highly important.
Councilmember Sheep.
A couple of things. First of all, I am very interested in involving the public forum to gather information from whoever in the community wants to contribute as far as areas they think need to be targeted more for enforcement, we keep violators, that type of thing. A few months ago, we heard a lady come here and speak about I think it was one person in particular that was actually targeting, her. So I think a public forum is sort of a very useful purpose. Secondly, I completely agree with the chief after reviewing all the regulations. In fact, a lot of the city-specific regulations were just regurgitating what was already in the state, and it's actually served no value at all, in my opinion. So I don't see the additional legislation period of all is necessary. I think what the chief has already implemented some targeted enforcement is actually accomplishing a lot. We have a bit more to accomplish there, chief, by the way.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree.
But I think we've already made great strides. And again, I think I like the keeping the discretion of the judgment of the officers in place without, without noise meters and the training and everything that goes along with those. So I wouldn't propose any additional legislation at all. And I think what the chief said, public outreach. So, people report these things on Facebook. It's like, well, you're not reporting that way. And, I for one look at Facebook maybe once every few months, just to see what's going on in the city. But the real method, I believe, the police already have in place a reporting mechanism that people can submit, I don't know what they call complaints, directly to the police department. And if especially if you have multiple people submitting the same or similar complaints, those are going to get attention. So I believe that there is some education needed in that respect as well. But based on everything else, I think we need to keep on doing what we are doing, continue the targeted enforcement and educate our public.
Go ahead, City Administrator, and then I've got a question. Would council be interested in using one of the committees of the whole for upcoming meeting to open that 5:30 to 7 o'clock for a muffler discussion, kind of how we did fireworks, hopefully with more attendance than like.
Absolutely.
Is that something you're all interested in doing? Sure.
And then the only question I had for council is, does anybody disagree with Councilmember Schaefer's recommendation? Not seeing any? Well, unless there is any further discussion, we have no additional items of business. So unless there are objections, we are adjourned at 8:37 p.m. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Right. Thanks for volunteering.
I tend to.
But I missed, I guess I missed.
Yeah, it was my. Like, it's a